I have created scientific magic. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 126. Feel the anger of everyone who died under the magic circle. Magic barrage is undoubtedly Lin En's forte, and it is also the magic he uses most against the enemy. But the person who improved this magic was Helram, and now the opponent has no choice but to use this technique on the flying iron thorns. The sharp sound of breaking through the air continued to ring, and fine beads of sweat oozed from Lin En's forehead. He had no doubt that he would be shot into a sieve. Even the strongest protective spell he mastered, Magic Barrier, could not completely block such a dense attack, unless Lin En suddenly thought of the magic that Helram used when defending against Hand of the Flame Demon. There are many factors that can affect and distort space, such as mass, momentum, stress, pressure. But in the final analysis, it is energy. And wizards only have one kind of energy. At that moment, Lin En understood, stretched out his hand, and a large amount of magic power gushed out of his body, arranged very tightly together, forming a ring-shaped sphere that wrapped himself inside. Just before the iron sandstorm was about to hit him, the space around Lin En was deformed to a certain extent, and all the attacks were deflected by a hair's breadth. This was the fourth ring magic, deflection field. Lin En successfully landed on the ground, and his back was already sweating. As a formal wizard, with the help of huge computing power, he forcibly cast the fourth ring magic. The consumption of magic power can only be described as terrible. In an instant, only half of the magic power reserve in the body was left. The power of the great wizard can be seen. This was when Helram had suffered a strong backlash from magic in advance and could not go all out. At this time, the change appeared again, and a terrifying scream suddenly swept the whole scene. Both Lin En and Helram were affected at the same time. Lin En separated a trace of his peripheral vision and looked at the vengeful spirit on the high platform. A large amount of spiritual light was constantly merging into Yaita's seemingly weak body. The opponent's momentum became stronger and stronger. Even through the alchemy array that bound the spirit body, he could feel the terrible breath. After absorbing the soul power of countless people, Helram actually created a great wizard-level vengeful spirit. Unlike the white doves raised by the intelligent brain, the girl named Yaita's spirit body changed from clear blue to dazzling bright red after absorbing the soul power of countless people, and her pupils revealed a hatred for the living. Helram, are all you doing now really what Yaita wants? Lin En kept speaking to interfere with the other party's thoughts. If Philip had not lied at the beginning, Yaita should have died before the establishment of the academy. In other words, this little girl, who was only 8 or 9 years old, was imprisoned in the formation that bound her spirit body for at least 20 years. She increased her strength at the cost of sacrificing thousands of people, and was forced to be stuffed into another person's body and resurrected in this weird way. This is not what the other party should accept. Perhaps dying like this at the beginning was the best ending. You will never understand that the entire Yaita harbor exists because of this, Helram said in a deep voice, and when he raised his hand, all the elements in the vast space in front of him were stripped away at a very fast speed. Fourth ring magic, vacuum field. At this moment, there was only one thought left in his mind, that is, to get the secret of perfect soul fusion from Lin En's mind, at any cost. While Lin En was struggling to deal with Helram's attack, 2 small-looking mice quietly slipped behind Helram, and climbed up the platform with difficulty with their claws. Under the terrifying breath of the vengeful spirit, they bit the lid of the reagent bottle with difficulty with their teeth. At the same time, the vacuum field had spread to Lin En's front. Although he retreated again and again, he could not catch up with the speed of the field. It seems that with the help of this weak body, the power you can exert is only so much. Helram's indifferent words rang in the hall, but the vacuum field in front of him blocked the spread of sound. After the previous test, Helram had found that the wizard in front of him was not as powerful as he imagined. Although he didn't know how the other party took the magic net from him, it seemed that Lin En was even struggling to deal with the fourth ring magic. Therefore, Even if he was attacked by magic and his wizard level dropped, Rim still had enough confidence to defeat him. Lin En had retreated to the corner. The spreading vacuum field was close at hand, but his expression did not change at all. He deliberately retreated to the corner not only to avoid this magic. At this moment, on the high platform, a yellowish thick liquid gushed out from the reagent bottle continuously, and then two mice, one hugged the flint, and the other bit it with sharp teeth. A spark appeared on the high platform, and then the two mice were blown away by the violent explosion. At the same time, the alchemy array that bound the vengeful spirit was also destroyed. With a piercing scream, the powerful vengeful spirit immediately broke free from its restraints, and black mist surged all over its body, attacking Rim who was closest to it. Yeta! Rim turned his head suddenly. A trace of panic appeared on his face, and more of anger. Lin En dared to pull out his hand to attack his daughter, but when he turned around, he saw not the weak and tender girl in his impression, whose spirit would be shattered in the next moment, but a vengeful spirit with a terrifying aura. Her tender face became ferocious and resentful, and the red blood mist surged. The hands that almost solidified into substance did not wait for Heron Ram to react, and directly slapped him away. Compared with the physical pain, the panic and fear in Heron Ram's heart were more intense. According to the records of the spiritual books left by the evil wizard Merc, after the spirit breaks through to become a great wizard, it will restore all the memories of the previous life and become a soul that can exist without the support of the body. However, at this moment, Yaeta seemed to have completely lost her mind and even took him as the target of attack. Undead manipulation. Heron Ram's face was distorted, and the huge mental power turned into chains to tightly bind Yaeta, who was screaming and rushing towards him. See what your daughter has become. Is this your purpose, Heron Ram? Do you think a 9-year-old child has the ability to control so much soul power? Lin En said sarcastically. When he fought with North in the manner before, he found that relying on devouring soul power to improve strength is not without cost. Feel the anger of everyone who died under the magic circle. Chapter 127 Screaming Banshee. Yaeta. Yaeta. Blood kept pouring out of Ram's mouth and nose. This was a sign of severe damage to his mental power, but he didn't care about it at the moment. He kept calling his daughter's name, trying to awaken Yaeta's reason. However, this was just a useless effort. The soul power of thousands of people and the resentment before death had completely overwhelmed Yaeta's reason and made her fall into madness. Don't blame me, Yaeta. Ram was hard-hearted. He knew that if he didn't control the situation, everything would be over. Now, only by searching for a way to merge souls from Lin En's brain could his daughter return to normal. Fourth ring spell, soul binding, Ram shouted in a low voice, and countless runes composed of pure mental power instantly enveloped Yaeta's whole body. A shrill scream came from Yaeta's mouth, and the almost staring spirit struggled hard. This was the severe pain caused by the soul being burned by the runes. The bloodshot eyes made her look like a demon. The girl's shrill screams made Heron Ram's face show a trace of pity, and the magic that bound the spirit body also weakened a little. At this moment, the power of the vengeful spirit reached its limit, and blood-colored mist continued to gush out of the body, eroding the runes attached to the body, which were transformed from mental power. The moment Yaeta broke free from the restraints, she had already pounced in front of him. Under the other party's horrified gaze, her right hand surging with blood mist pierced directly into Rim's chest. Yaeta. Rim immediately felt an extremely cold force flowing into his body through the wound. His vitality was being rapidly extracted. Looking at the familiar yet unfamiliar face in front of him, a trace of regret and unwillingness appeared in his pupils. The body that lost its vitality soon fell to the ground, staring at Lin En with lifeless eyes, and opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something. Forgive her. Lin En read out Rim's last words, and then shook his head. You think too highly of me, Rim. At this moment, Lin En had quietly retreated to the entrance. Although he had used the vengeful spirit Yaeta to get rid of the great wizard, he had no means to deal with this vengeful spirit. After seizing part of Rim's power, Yaeta's aura became even heavier, and his eyes filled with resentment immediately fell on Lin En. A terrifying scream sounded from Yaeta's mouth again, and then the whole vengeful spirit turned into a thick blood-red mist and rolled towards him. Lin En suddenly felt a deep sense of depression and suffocation, as if his body fell into the mud and it was difficult to move. This feeling was very similar to the fourth ring spell, Slow Barrier. A vengeful spirit actually mastered such a powerful magic. Things were obviously beyond his control, but Lin En didn't have the mind to think about it at the moment, because the blood-red mist was already in front of him. Liquid nitrogen ice field. Lin En raised his hand, and a stream of extremely cold air rushed forward in a semicircular shape. The next moment, a crisp condensation sound was heard, and everything around seemed to slow down. The blood-red mist condensed into blood-red ice crystals in an instant under the terrible ultra-low temperature. But the three-ring witchcraft ice field obviously could not trap this powerful vengeful spirit for a long time. Under this surge of soul power, the blood-red mist soon exploded, ice chips flew, and a strong magic wave immediately blew Lin En away. The light of Mage Shield lit up in front of Lin En, offsetting most of the impact force, and his body rolled back to the passage behind. However, Lin En's face was still solemn. Before, he deliberately released Yaida, in addition to wanting to take advantage of the situation to fight against Helram. He also thought that an irrational vengeful spirit would always be easier to deal with than the Great Wizard, but after truly experiencing the horror of the other party, Lin En's previous contempt was no longer in his heart. Facing such a terrifying vengeful spirit, I am afraid that all the wizards in the entire harbor town may not be able to defeat it, but may become the other party's nourishment. Helram, you really created a monster. Lin En had a headache, facing Yaita, who rushed over again. He was about to cast a spell to deal with him, but he found that the other party seemed to have hit an invisible barrier and was blocked outside the passage. Is there a second layer of protection here to restrict spirits? Lin En immediately realized this, and asked with a thought. 071, can you tell where I am now? According to the location, the agreed target is now in the Screaming Tower of Yaita College. 10 minutes ago, in Yaita College, Tick was standing on the top floor of the teacher's lounge, staring at the towering, Screaming Tower, not far away. Sir Tick, you have been watching here for several days. Have you found anything? A voice came from behind, and the person who spoke was Luo. He walked to Tick's side with great curiosity and asked, you deliberately stayed in Yaita for a whole month. I'm afraid it's not just to learn mathematical Olympiad, right? Tick stroked his long beard. Don't you think the layout of the buildings in the entire Yaita harbor is a little too regular? I heard that it was designed by Master Raphael. Luo Deng paused and said with a smile, Raphael's obsessive-compulsive disorder is well known in the wizard land. This master architect stubbornly believes that everything in the world should be neat and regular, and this theory has also been sought after by many people. No, I'm afraid it's not that simple. Tick shook his head, stretched out his hand and used magic to outline an image in the void, which was the architectural layout of the harbor town. Do you see anything? This is like an alchemical array? Luo quickly replied, yes, and if I'm not mistaken, it may be related to psychic energy. Tick's face was full of solemnity, and the center of this array was the Screaming Tower. It must be said that Helram's method of using the building layout as a cover was very clever. If he had not received a secret report from the parliament before he went to Yaita harbor and had paid special attention to it, he would not have thought in this direction at all. A psychic array that can cover the entire city? What exactly does the Great Wizard want to do? Roll frowned. I'm afraid it won't be good news. Tick's eyes flashed with a trace of worry, which reminded him of the tragedy 3 years ago. Maybe he was overthinking. Chapter 128, South City falls into chaos. Luo also remembered the incident that shocked the entire wizard land 3 years ago and led to the destruction of the psychic school. Naturally, he could understand Tick's worries and couldn't help asking, Mr. Tick, what should we do now? If something really happens, it will be difficult for you and me to do anything. This is the base camp of Helram. Apart from anything else, this great wizard alone is not something they can deal with. Of course, we don't need to do anything, Tick said concisely. The arrangement of this magic circle has not been a day or two, and there shouldn't be any problems in the short term. And according to the time, they will probably be here soon, Tick added. Those academic seminar specialists. Luo immediately realized what the other party was talking about. It was obvious that Tick deliberately took this opportunity to find some helpers. Not bad. Tick waved his hand to disperse the magic image that appeared in the void and told another good news. If I'm not mistaken, your teacher, Master August, should also be here. Upon hearing this news, a flash of excitement and joy flashed across Luo'er's face, and the original worry suddenly disappeared, and he said confidently, "Since the teacher is here, I can rest assured. So next we just need to wait. I hope these days will go smoothly." Tick stroked his long beard and said calmly. However, as soon as the voice fell, Tick's face suddenly changed, and he turned his head sharply to look in the direction of the southern city. A strong wave of magic power was coming from that direction. Tick and Luo looked at each other, and after blessing a slow-falling spell, he jumped directly from the towering roof and rushed towards the direction of the southern city. There were not a few people who sensed the magic power fluctuations with the two of them. The professors and students were awakened from their dreams, feeling uneasy, as if some terrible disaster was approaching. When Tick arrived at the South City, he saw a chaotic scene. Countless poor people, apprentices, and even wizards were running out like crazy. Because it was late at night, many people were in disheveled clothes. Some even ran out naked, or were trampled by the running crowd. The blood dyed the street red, and the air was filled with a pungent smell of blood, which was disgusting. Cries and wails resounded throughout the South City, which was creepy. The hand of the wizard, seeing a disheveled woman being knocked to the ground and about to die under the trampling, Tick quickly cast a spell to drag the person out. "Do you know what happened in the South City?" Roll asked anxiously. "Dead. Alva is dead, and Anthony." Everyone is dead," the woman murmured with lifeless sighs, as if she couldn't hear Roll's question, and just kept repeating this sentence. Tick saw this and could only let go of him helplessly. He cast a spell and jumped onto the rooftop. Then he cast a fireball spell, lighting up the entire South City district. Then the two of them couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. The streets of the entire South City district were densely covered with corpses. Tick saw with his own eyes several poor people running in a hurry in the distance. Suddenly, they fell to the ground without any warning and lost their voices. Then a faint blue light floated out of their bodies and poured directly into the ground. Looking at this horrible scene, Luo'er felt a chill on his back. "Soul-devouring array," Tick said word by word. "We must not let this thing continue to spread," Tick said in a deep voice, stopped Philip and others who had just rushed over from the academy, and after a quick explanation, he found several wizards who had escaped from the South City district and asked about the architectural layout in this area. The nodes of the magic array should be hidden in those abandoned empty houses. As long as the nodes on the periphery are destroyed, the magic array should stop. "But we'd better act quickly," Tick said very quickly. "If we wait one more second, dozens of people will die." Compared with Philip and others who have not yet experienced the power of the magic array, the wizards who escaped from the South City district are unwilling to go in again. This place is too scary. Even former wizards cannot avoid the fate of having their souls sucked out. "Where is Master Helram? Where is he?" someone in the crowd shouted. There was such a big chaos in the harbor, and Helram, the controller, was now missing. This made everyone present a little panic, as if they had lost their backbone. Master Helram left the Aida harbor some time ago and went to Greenreel, the wizard city. Philip explained hesitantly. "Since the master is not here, we can only rely on our own strength to quell the chaos in the South City." Tick quickly took over the conversation, and did not mention their previous speculation, but looked at the wizards present and continued to speak. "I think you should have heard about the tragedy of the school of SYNOPSIS 3 years ago. If this array is not stopped as soon as possible, the entire port city may soon become a city of death. Think about it. This is tens of thousands of lives." Under Tick's earnest persuasion, most of the wizards finally took action. They still have some attachment to this Yaita port. As the array nodes hidden in the South City were destroyed, when it was dawn, the soul-devouring array that continued to spread stopped. Lin En also took advantage of the chaotic scene in the South City to mix into the crowd and helped destroy several array nodes inside, which made things so smooth. Until noon the next day, Tick, Roll, Philip, Kevin and others settled the terrified poor people, and then returned to Yaita College together to discuss the next matters. Although the chaos was under control, Everyone looked worried. The poor people and wizards killed by the magic circle in the entire South City district, adding up to thousands of people. Such a huge soul power is a huge threat no matter where it is used. Lin En, who was sitting in the conference room listening to the discussion of several people, remained silent, although he knew that all this soul power poured into the Screaming Tower and created a great wizard-level vengeful spirit. But this matter involved Helram, the founder of the Yayata school. If he rashly opened his mouth to expose the other party, it would probably cause some unnecessary suspicion and criticism. After all, Lin En couldn't explain why he was not affected by the soul-devouring magic circle, and how he killed a great wizard. Since the vengeful spirit of Yayata could not leave the Screaming Tower, it would be better to wait for the Parliament to send someone to solve this matter. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129, Transforming the Virtual Realm. In the next 2 days, the entire Yayata harbor was in a panic. The tragedy in the South City had spread throughout the harbor city. Although Tick and others wanted to stop it, they were completely powerless. After all, the impact this time was too widespread. There were thousands of poor people who fled the South City and witnessed their relatives and friends die inexplicably and their souls were harvested. Various rumors emerged one after another. Some people suspected that a magic workshop was conducting a taboo study on harvesting souls, while others believed that this was a sign of the birth of evil. There were even rumors that the evil wizard Merc was hiding in this harbor city. However, Philip, Orlando and others no longer had time to pay attention to these endless rumors, because a very strange situation had occurred in Yayata College. Whenever it was late at night, there would always be a faint scream in the college, as if it could condense people's souls, and all the wizard apprentices were scared. Like Pierce, a wizard apprentice who has been here for more than 10 years, he recalled the past. That was before the psychic school was abandoned. Many students had heard this strange sound at that time, and the Screaming Tower was named after it. Who can tell me what is inside that tower? On the morning of the third day, Tick, who couldn't sleep for 2 nights due to the screaming, finally couldn't help but ask. That is the Screaming Tower, a research institute of the psychic school a few years ago. Since the school was disbanded, this tower has been abandoned, Philip explained, but he was tight-lipped about the details and was unwilling to say more. For details, I'll explain it to you when Master Helram comes back. Orlando on the side also helped. Tick and Roll didn't dare to push too hard. After all, they were still in the Yayata harbor. If there was a conflict, it would be difficult to even get out. As for entering the Screaming Tower to check the situation, this is simply like courting death. To guess that the souls that were extracted were finally gathered in this tower. The interior might be full of dead spirits. If you step in rashly, you might be in danger of your life. In view of this, the two had no choice but to wait for the support of the Parliament while trying to win over Lin En, a possible ally. If their guess is correct, the tragedy in the South City district is probably related to him, so Philip and others may be involved. In comparison, the only one who is less suspicious is Lin En, a professor of the arcane mathematics who has just arrived in the land of wizards. In view of this, Lin En was inexplicably dragged by Tick and Roll to discuss secretly for a whole night, discussing various possible situations. When Lin En came out, his expression was very strange. Unlike the two people's thoughts, he thought that not too many people would be involved in this matter. After all, the reputation of the soul-devouring array is too bad. It can be said to be a taboo among taboos in the land of wizards. Once it is exposed, even if Ram has the identity of a great wizard, he may not escape the fate of being hunted down. That's why the other party created the Faceless Organization, whose identities were unknown to each other. In the entire Bloody Thorn, probably only North knew who their boss behind the scenes was. Because of this, before the news of Helram's death was exposed, Lin En didn't think they would encounter any attacks from the remnants. Taking advantage of the suspension of classes due to the riots, he studied the virtual domain that was previously seized by the intelligent brain. After 2 days of familiarization, Lin En has transformed this domain composed of magic power and soul power. It is no longer a state of chaos and nothing but darkness. Instead, it is like the universe, with countless stars flashing. Here you can see huge stars constantly rotating around the stars under the influence of gravity, and you can see the magnificent scene of the stars collapsing or expanding into red giants. Lin En is completely immersed in this experience like a creator. Although most of the work is completed by the intelligent brain loading the corresponding data, this sense of participation is also a very unique experience. Try again. Can we replicate a black hole? Lin En pondered, and retrieved the database about black holes in the intelligent brain, but when he was about to replicate, he received a prompt of insufficient energy. Lin En was stunned for a moment, and then asked, 071, how much energy do we have left? Remaining energy, 8.4%. Do you want to absorb the stored soul power to replenish it? Absorb it. Lin En hesitated for a moment and nodded. Judging from Yayata's situation, it is not an easy thing to resurrect a person in this world. Those who were devoured by the soul-devouring array and transformed into soul bodies have lost their previous memories, leaving only the most profound obsessions before death, and there is no possibility of recovery. By the way, leave the spirit of the white pigeon for me. Don't convert her too. Lin En suddenly thought of something and spoke again. Unlike other spirits he had seen, the white pigeon is a very rare soul body that can maintain rationality and can communicate, which is very valuable for research, not to mention that he had made a promise before. But in the eyes of the intelligent brain, the white dove is a gift package that is several times stronger than the soul strength of an ordinary wizard apprentice and can restore 12% of the energy reserves. Therefore, whenever the intelligent brain is short of energy, the proposal to sacrifice the white dove in exchange for energy will always pop up first. Seeing that the energy reserves of the intelligent brain have increased to 100% again in a very short time, Lin En did not look very happy, because there are too many places that need energy. After Helrim's death, this virtual field lost its energy supply. Lin En had no choice but to let the intelligent brain be responsible for providing magic power, and the consumption was also very terrifying. It would take 15% of the energy reserves a day. Forget it. Let's not do the black hole for the time being. All the stars outside the visible range, just do a simple simulation. Don't waste too much computing power on it. After thinking about it, Lin En quickly read it in his mind. After the voice fell, the stars in the distance suddenly dimmed a little, and the daily magic power consumption also became 5%. If there was no one in the virtual field, the consumption would be reduced to about 1%. Lin En spent so much time and effort to create this virtual realm into a cosmic picture, not just for fun, but for great use. After witnessing the darkness of Yayata Harbor and the dual faces of Helram, Lin En realized that outsiders were unreliable after all, and he needed to form his own school to avoid being deceived again. Chapter 130. Let's call this place outside of time and space. It is not an easy task to establish a new school in the land of wizards in a short period of time. It is too slow to recruit apprentices for training, and as he continues to bring out all kinds of magical knowledge, it is only a matter of time before he encounters troubles. After all, with his current strength, he cannot walk sideways in the land of wizards. Although he lasted so long in the previous battle with the great wizard Helram, Lin En knew very well that if the intelligent brain had not suddenly seized the control of the virtual field when the opponent was casting spells with all his strength, causing the opponent to fall into a strong magic backlash, he would have no chance of winning even with the computing power of 9 three-ring wizards. In this way, it is necessary to fool some suitable people, let them believe that the secret law society is real, and become one of them, so as to spontaneously escort the development of the school. This virtual field is the best tool in his hand. The gathering form of the Faceless gave Lin En a lot of inspiration, but of course the venue of this gathering must be made taller and more grand. After all, he has blown his reputation. As Lin En was thinking, he created a limited universe bubble, suspended in the endless universe. There was an atmosphere and even gravity inside, and the constants were exactly the same as the surface of the planet. Let's call this place beyond time and space. Lin En quickly asked the intelligent brain to record this name. In the future, this would be the place where he would fool those high-level wizards. Well, we need to add something else. Lin En was wantonly using his creativity until he found that the energy reserve of the intelligent brain had been consumed by more than half again, and then he hurriedly stopped. You must know that the soul power collected by the intelligent brain is not infinite, and one less is one less. Although he has memorized the alchemy formula for stripping the soul body, Lin En is not going to use this method of depriving life to replenish energy. After arranging the decoration inside a universe bubble, Lin En asked again, 071, how are those, faceless, whose spirits I connected before? Are they still normal? Since these faceless people have basically stayed in the virtual field for 2 or 3 years and participated in hundreds of gatherings, the protection of their mental power has long been like a sieve. When Lin En used the 4th ring magic, deflection field, the computing power was mobilized to the most terrifying level, even reaching more than 50%, so after the battle, the mental power of these people was hit hard. 5 of them died on the spot, and the remaining 4 temporarily lost contact. It was unknown whether they fainted or destroyed the faceless ring in their hands. No remaining connection targets in the virtual domain. Could it be that they were really wiped out? Lin En was shocked, but the intelligent brain could only roughly judge the current situation of these people through the situation of magic connection, which might not be accurate, but in any case, the secret organization, Faceless, was about to be destroyed. Just like Bloodthorn, as the white gloves of Hellram, each Faceless has a lot of bloody cases in his hands. Just looking at their research results, you can get a glimpse of it. Lin En did not mean to sympathize with these people, and it was not necessarily a bad thing to let them disappear with Hellram. The only thing that made Lin En feel regretful was that the method of relying on stealing computing power to increase his own strength would probably not work in the short term. Even if new members joined in the future, it would take a long time to crack the mental defense. Thinking about it, Lin En temporarily withdrew from the virtual realm and took out 3 exquisitely designed rings, which were the faceless rings of North, Barbara, and Hank. As a caster, Hellrim did not need this thing to enter and exit the virtual realm, but it was precisely because of the deep connection that he would suffer a strong backlash when he was deprived of control. Since he obtained the faceless ring, he has been studying the principle of this thing. After damaging a ring, he has also gained something. It just takes some time to completely analyze it and successfully replicate it. 071. Change the frequency of magic entering the virtual realm, Lin En muttered in his mind. In this way, the remaining rings scattered outside lost their original effectiveness. Without the receiver, that thing is a waste. Knock, knock, knock. Just as Lin En was thinking, there was a knock on the door. After putting away a few rings, Lin En urged the hand of the mage to open the door. The silver gray-haired witch stood quietly at the door and reminded softly, Professor Lin En, Mr. Tick asked me to tell you that several wizards from the Parliament will be here today. Okay, I'll go there. Lin En nodded and followed Johnny out. When they arrived at the gate of Yaita College, Philip, Kevin and Orlando were already waiting there. Before he could say hello, Lin En saw several beautifully decorated carriages galloping towards this side on the street not far away. The carriages in front were not pulled by camels, but by strong fire lions. The manes on their bodies were like burning flames, looking extremely majestic. The motorcade stopped in front of everyone very smoothly. Under the attention of Lin En and others, the curtain slowly opened, and a middle-aged wizard with a tuft of beard and deep eyes got off the car. He observed the surrounding architectural layout at first glance. Seeing the rows of houses of the same length and width, he nodded with satisfaction and said with emotion, Yaita Harbor, it's been a long time since I came here. Unexpectedly, the person sent by the Parliament would be this gentleman. Tick immediately felt something was wrong. Fortunately, a familiar figure quickly walked down from the carriage behind. He was a very young wizard, who looked only in his 20s, with a handsome face and a faint smile on the corner of his mouth, which made people feel a little good when they saw him. Lin En was also observing the two people, especially pausing for a moment on the particularly different wizard medals on their chests. Two great wizards? He had no impression of the middle-aged wizard who led the group, and could not guess his identity, but the other wizard was easy to identify. There should be only one great wizard this young, and that was the famous, magic star, August in the wizard land. Philip and Kevin looked at each other and immediately realized that something seemed a little wrong. In the past, when holding academic seminars, the Parliament would symbolically send a formal wizard to notify them, but this time, two great wizards came at once, which made the wizards of the Yaita school feel a little uneasy. Chapter 131 Annoyed Raphael. Masters, welcome to Yaita. Although he felt a little uneasy, Philip still took the initiative to greet them, forcing a smile and saying, "Why is Helrim not here?" Raphael looked around at everyone and asked curiously. "The master went to Greenreal some time ago," Philip replied indirectly. Raphael raised his eyebrows. He had not heard of this news, but Greenreal was very big, and he and Helrim were not familiar with each other. In view of this, Raphael did not intend to refute it. After August got off the carriage, his eyes fell on Lin En, with a smile on his face. "This is Professor Lin En from the Secret Society, right?" During this period, when Lawor sent me letters, he mentioned your mathematical Olympiad courses and your airship experiments. "That will definitely be a highlight in the history of the Wizarding Land, Master August. You are too kind." Lin En responded with a smile. Raphael also interrupted at this moment. "I have seen your star map. I have to say it is very perfect, much more accurate than those drawn by prophecy wizards. In fact, there is no big problem with the star map circulated in the wizard land. The two are just different reference objects. Of course, they may not realize the impact of the rotation of the planet." Lin En explained. He still has some respect for those wizards who are dedicated to studying the laws of the movement of stars. After all, this is a very long and boring job. As for omissions, it is normal. There is always a process for exploring the world. Several people walked into the academy while talking, and Tick and others were left aside. However, such a relaxed atmosphere of conversation made Philip feel relieved. When the few people were talking, Tick finally couldn't help asking, "Master Raphael, I heard that the entire architectural layout of Yaita was designed by you personally. Is that true?" "Of course." Raphael nodded proudly. Tick hesitated for a long time before speaking slowly. "If I'm not mistaken, this layout should be for the convenience of setting up a certain alchemical array, right?" "Very good. You can actually see this." Raphael looked at Tick in surprise. Combining alchemical arrays with architecture is what he is best at, but seeing Tick asking, he still explained. "At the beginning, Helrim told me that he planned to study some magic related to psychic power in Yaita College. In order to avoid some unnecessary accidents, it is necessary to set up a magic array that can suppress spirits in Yaita College, so I proposed that the alchemical array can be integrated into the architectural layout." Tick and Roll looked at each other. Before the evil wizard Merc caused the destruction of the psychic school, it was not a big deal for a school to add a course to study psychic power. This city was established more than 20 years ago, and there was nothing wrong with Raphael's actions. The only thing that made him feel strange was that since the magic array that suppressed spirits covered the entire city, what about the poor people in the southern city whose souls were taken away? "Has anything happened in the Yaita school these days?" August asked appropriately. Raphael also looked over. When they entered this port city, they had already found something wrong, because there was no one on the bustling streets. "Let me explain. Just 2 days ago, a tragedy happened in the southern city." Philip sighed. When he saw the two great wizards arrive at the gate of the academy, he knew that this scandal was probably impossible to hide. In other words, someone used the soul-devouring array in Yaita harbor. After listening to Philip's story, Raphael's face became a little ugly, and he felt inexplicably that he was being tricked. He quickly analyzed that someone must have privately changed his arrangement, so when he heard the inexplicable screaming sound in the academy, Raphael immediately realized that the souls of the dead must have gathered in the screaming tower, because that is where the center of the entire array is. "Let's go. I want to see what tricks Helrim is playing." Raphael snorted coldly and rushed to the location of the screaming tower. Philip and the others did not want to believe that this matter had anything to do with Master Helram, but they were powerless to stop Raphael's actions, so they had no choice but to follow him. Lin En was no exception. He was somewhat curious about how the two great wizards would deal with the powerful ghost. The tower that had been sealed for several years was opened again, and the dim and cold scene inside soon came into everyone's eyes. The walls and ceilings were covered with spider webs, and the floor tiles were also covered with dust. It was obvious that no one had taken care of it for a long time. The moment they entered the tower, they immediately felt a sense of oppression, as if something was staring at them in the dark. Raphael continued to move forward regardless and walked towards the basement of the tower. Compared with the dilapidated scene above, this place was cleaned up very cleanly. "Be careful," August suddenly warned. The next moment, a piercing scream sounded in the tower, and under the surging blood-red mist, a lightning-like shadow directly attacked Troll, the lowest wizard among the crowd. Under the influence of Soul Scream, the movements of several people stopped at the same time. Lor had no time to react, and the vengeful spirit had already rushed in front of him. His body could not move and he could only watch a bloody palm grabbing towards his chest. But faster than that was a strong magic beam, which hit the blood-red mist directly and knocked the vengeful spirit Yayata directly out. The one who cast the spell was August, and he was also the first person among all people to break free from the influence of the scream. Lor, who had walked around the gates of hell, was still frozen in place, unable to move. A drop of sweat slid down his forehead. Just now, he really thought he was dead. At this moment, Raphael had also recovered. He flicked his wrist and threw a reagent bottle out. After touching the vengeful spirit, it exploded instantly, and the powder inside was spilt out. The blood-colored mist that was originally wrapped around it gradually dissipated, revealing its true appearance. "Lydia!" Tick shouted in astonishment. During the time he attended Olympiad classes in the academy, he had met the half-orc girl many times, so after seeing the face of the vengeful spirit clearly, he could not help shouting. Chapter 132 The end of the Iitis school. Compared to Tick, who had mistaken the person, Orlando and Raphael were pale, obviously having recognized him. After absorbing the soul power of thousands of people, Yayata was so powerful that it was invincible to Lin En, but under the joint efforts of the two great wizards, he had no ability to struggle. With the help of the magic circle that existed in the tower to suppress the spirit, Raphael quickly bound the vengeful spirit Yayata to a corner of the tower. August took out a blue crystal at the right time as a support for binding the spirit, and assisted Raphael in sealing the other party in. The blue crystal was soon stained with blood red, and the vengeful spirit surging inside could be vaguely seen. After resolving the threat in the tower, Raphael quickened his pace and walked deeper underground, his face becoming more and more gloomy. His guess was undoubtedly true. Helram had indeed changed his alchemy magic circle privately. However, the angry Raphael soon discovered that Helram, whom he was looking for, was dead, and died in this tower. How could it be? Philip looked at the body lying on the floor with disbelief. If it wasn't for the familiar face, he would never have recognized that the person in front of him was Helram. Kevin and Orlando also looked incredulous. A great wizard died quietly in the Screaming Tower. If they hadn't followed Raphael in, they would probably still be in the dark. But didn't Master Ram go to the Wizard City Greenreel? A guess suddenly jumped into everyone's mind, but they were unwilling to believe that possibility. His vitality was drained, which should be the cause of death. It may be the work of the vengeful spirit. Before his death, he was also strongly attacked by magic. Raphael looked at Helram's body carefully, frowned, turned to look at Tick, and asked, "You seem to know the identity of the vengeful spirit just now." "That should be Yayata," Orlando sighed before Tick answered. He knew that if the Parliament wanted to investigate these things, he would not be able to hide them, so he took the initiative to speak out what he knew. "Yayata is the daughter of Master Helram, a child with great magical talent and a psychic, but because of her good talent, Helram exposed her to various magics at an early age, including psychic magic, and wanted to train her to become the youngest official wizard in the entire wizard land, creating a new record. He also believed that she had the potential to break through the legendary wizard. However, things did not go as planned. Before becoming a formal wizard, Yayata died in a psychic magic accident. Master Helram has always been worried about his daughter's death. He believes that if he hadn't let Yayata contact magic without a complete mind, such a tragedy would not have happened. At this point, Orlando shook his head and didn't continue. One of the purposes of Helram to establish a school in this port city was to find a way to resurrect the dead. However, since the psychic Professor Kalu, who was in charge of this matter, traveled to the Secus Empire, this Screaming Tower was abandoned. He thought Helram had given up this unrealistic idea, but he didn't expect. Philip and Kevin also showed a trace of sadness on their faces. They also didn't expect Helram to use such a cruel method as the soul-devouring array. Raphael couldn't help but sigh. It was undoubtedly a great irony that a great wizard died at the hands of his daughter and the vengeful spirit he created. I'm afraid it's not that simple. August pointed to the dissolved and damaged floor tiles, and the traces of damage to the array arranged on the high platform. For a vengeful spirit, fire magic can't be used. Could it be that someone else intervened? Perhaps this matter was not done by Master Helram, Kevin said anxiously. Raphael sneered. The Screaming Tower was built in the Yayata College. In addition, the psychic array covering the entire harbor city was modified. Such a large project, he would never believe that it had nothing to do with Helram. However, the traces of battle left in the tower made Raphael a little confused. If there was another great wizard who planned this matter with Helram, why didn't the other party take their achievements away after Helram's death, but chose to leave this vengeful spirit in the Screaming Tower? The soul power collected by the entire soul-devouring array created such a powerful vengeful spirit. Leaving her here would be a waste of time. Raphael suddenly thought of another possibility, that is, after the soul-devouring array was activated, someone entered the Screaming Tower and killed Helram, wanting to stop the array from spreading further. Is there a second great wizard in the Yayata harbor who is unwilling to show up? Raphael was puzzled, not realizing that the other target he was looking for was right beside him. After all, in Raphael's impression, Helram was a five-ring great wizard, and a formal wizard might not even have the ability to resist him. Lin En was also observing the bottom of the tower. Due to the vacuum field released by him, the white phosphorus flame that lost its fuel had long been extinguished. It was impossible to find any clues based on the traces of flame damage, so it should not involve him. Realizing this, Lin En was immediately relieved. Killing the great wizard Helram and stopping the spread of the soul-devouring magic circle was a great achievement if it was really told to others, but it would definitely bring a lot of trouble. In the next few days, the development of things was somewhat beyond Lin En's expectations. Although Raphael and August reported the death of Helram, they did not reveal that the tragedy in the southern city might be related to this great wizard. After all, Helram had been operating in Yayata harbor for many years and had a very high reputation. Now he suddenly told these civilians that Helram had set up a psychic array covering the entire city and wanted to seize the souls of all of them. The impact was too bad and would only increase the civilians' fear of wizard rule, so the responsibility was pushed on to the evil wizards who had fled, but there would naturally be no shortage of punishments in secret. All the titles and honors that Ram had previously obtained were revoked, and all his property was confiscated. Philip, Orlando, Kevin and others all looked worried. They knew that the Yayata school was probably going to end in the future. Chapter 133 Chapter 132 Do you know who you just rejected? In the meeting room of Yayata College, after the discussion on how to compensate the families of the deceased, August suddenly invited him. Professor Lin, I wonder if you are interested in joining my school. Everyone present was stunned for a moment. Philip was about to speak but stopped. After Helram's death, Lin was the only hope of Yayata school, but he also knew that he was only a professor of mathematical Olympiad science based on the idea of being a friend of Kalu and spreading knowledge. It was only a matter of time before Yayata school would fall, and he really had no reason to let Lin stay. What's more, the person who invited him was Magic Star, August. No one would refuse this proposal. Not only Philip, but Tick and others also had the same idea. But Lin's response was beyond everyone's expectations. Thank you for your invitation, Master August, but I'm sorry. Although Aida is in a lot of trouble now, I think it will eventually get through it. Is that so? That's a pity. August shook his head, a look of regret on his face, but he didn't say much. After the meeting, he left. Do you know who you just rejected? Professor Lin, Orlando said with emotion. Isn't he Master August? Lin asked in surprise. Could it be that he recognized the wrong person? Orlando choked and didn't know how to respond for a while. That was August, the magic star, the most talented wizard in the wizard land so far, and the one who was most likely to step into the legend. In Lin's words, it seemed that there was no difference between him and an ordinary wizard. You have only joined the AIDA school for 2 months. There is no need to live and die with it. You should have a broader world. Kevin on the side also dissuaded him. Lin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I'm afraid these people must have misunderstood something. He refused because of the high status of August. Just look at Luo. He worshipped the magic star. Once he joined the other school, no matter how many achievements he made, it would be difficult for him to get the right to speak, and there might even be conflicts. In comparison, the current Yaita school is more suitable for him to play his role. At least there is no one who can suppress him, and the geographical location of this port city is too good. It also has a route to the Seka's empire. However, Lin En did not correct the others. After all, this misunderstanding is not a bad thing. Philip and others looked at Lin En with a much closer look. As the saying goes, a friend in need is a friend indeed. At such a critical moment, Lin En, an outsider, refused a bright road and chose to stay as a member of the college, which touched all the professors. In a few days, it will be the annual academic seminar in the Wizard Land. This is very important for the survival of the Yaita school. I would like to ask you to represent the school to attend this seminar, Philip pleaded, and then looked at Orlando and Kevin, and spoke again. If we can successfully overcome the difficulties this time, we will jointly recommend you as the leader of the school. Philip knew very well that his ability was limited, not to mention preserving the glory of the school. I am afraid it would be difficult to even maintain the status quo. You must know that the Yaita school is not just a college. In fact, all wizards in the harbor city belong to this school. There are more than a dozen three-ring wizards alone, which is not something he can suppress. If things go wrong, it will fall apart. What's more, this time, in order to revive his daughter, Hulram used the soul-devouring array in the harbor city, which left a very bad impression on the parliament. Maybe the parliament is already discussing whether to abolish the entire Yaita school. These problems are not something he can solve. The foundation for the existence of a magic school is 2 points. The first is natural strength, and the second is academic research results. Although Lin En is just a former wizard like himself, he has the advantage of age. It is only a matter of time before he breaks through and becomes a great wizard. The other party is also a member of the Secret Law Society, and has mastered a lot of novel knowledge. Based on these 2 points, Philip made such a bold decision. Kevin and Orlando on the side did not mean to object. It was obvious that they had discussed it before. Thank you for your trust. I believe there will be good news at this academic seminar, Lin En said with a smile. But now there are only 4 days left before the academic seminar. It seems that we are already late, right? Kevin said hesitantly. It usually takes about 7 days to get from the port of Yaita to the wizard city of Greenreal. These days, in order to deal with the mess left by Hulram, they are so busy that they even began to hesitate whether to attend this academic seminar, because both Philip and Orlando felt that Lin En would definitely not stay in Yaita College at the beginning. So this very embarrassing situation was caused. It's certainly not enough to go over there by land, but we can fly over there, right? Lin En reminded. Orlando and the others suddenly felt their eyes brighten. Yes, they almost forgot about the airship. The next morning, a huge airship slowly landed over the AIDA College. After more than 2 months of driving training, Lydia has already been very good at it. She parked the airship steadily in the open space in front of the math department, which is enough to be the pilot of this voyage. And this airship has also undergone some magical transformation. Lin En referred to North's pirated goods and asked Tick to engrave the windproof and shock-reducing alchemy array on it. The interior is very large, and the passenger capacity has been expanded to 15 people. However, considering the comfort, Lin En decided to bring only 10 people. In addition to himself, Lydia, and Philip, Lin En also brought along Johnny, Pierce, and Elrock, 3 apprentices who performed well in the math department. As for why there are only 6 people, of course, it was because he had to bring Vic, Roll, Raphael, and August. Earlier, Lin En saw that they had been stranded at Yaita Harbor and didn't seem to be in a hurry. He thought that they either didn't plan to attend the seminar or had other ways to travel quickly, but he didn't expect that these people were actually planning to take advantage of his airship. Obviously, these great wizards who mastered force field magic could fly by themselves. Lin En secretly complained, but didn't care about this little thing. Besides, it would be safer to bring 2 great wizards with him if he ran into any flying monsters. Chapter 134 A seminar with magical features. Riding an airship up to thousands of meters in the sky for the first time, feeling the cold wind and watching the white clouds flying by. Tick and Luo were also slightly excited, but on the surface they still maintained a calm appearance. Although they had been in the port of Yaita for several days, they had the opportunity to take an airship at any time, and it only cost 10 silver coins, but they could not bring themselves to get together with the civilians. As a pilot, Lydia sometimes deliberately drove the airship into the clouds, so that everyone could feel the wonderful feeling of being soaked by the clouds. Luo reached out and touched the clouds that were coming towards him. It's really a good alchemical creation. It can actually let ordinary people who don't know magic feel like a great wizard, flying freely in the sky. Tick thought of the use of airships in transportation, which means that the time to travel between places can be reduced by more than half. If it can be popularized, it will be very convenient to travel in the land of wizards in the future. The cost of this thing should not be cheap, right? Tick asked. It is a little expensive. Lin En nodded seriously. Although the overall cost of the airship is not high and can be replaced with some cheap materials, the design concept is very valuable. Then Lin En asked how the academic seminars were held in the past. Tick recalled the grand occasion of thousands of wizards gathering together in previous years, telling the novel theories developed by the school and showing the latest magic developed. What impressed him most was the discussion of the nature of flames by several top schools 20 years ago. They put forward more than a dozen assumptions, hundreds of former wizards argued with each other, and even staged a full-scale fight in the venue. For example, the theory of fire elements, which is sought after by a group of wizards, believes that fire is an entity composed of countless small and lively microscopic elements that cannot be sensed by magic for the time being. It exists in those substances and elements that can burn. It will separate under high temperature. A large number of free fire elements gather together to form visible flames. The evidence is that after the element burns, it will not completely disappear, but will produce or transform into other elements, which must be caused by the separation of the fire element. However, this theory has many loopholes and cannot be recognized by all wizards. There are also the theory of flame magic and the theory of flame phlogiston. Some wizards even believe that flame is just a state and a manifestation of the violent movement of elements, and the so-called fire element does not exist at all. Then what? Lin En asked curiously. The founders of the last few mainstream theories each agreed to cast the strongest fire magic they created. The final winner is the great wizard Adela. The new magic he developed, Fire Element Storm, has an ultra-high temperature of tens of thousands of degrees, which almost killed another great wizard and won the debate. So now the theory of fire elements is prevalent in the wizard land. Tick said nostalgically, I don't know when I will see such a wonderful debate again. Of course, although the theory of fire elements won the victory, the wizards who opposed this theory did not give up. They have been working hard to study new fire magic in the hope of winning the game. However, they have not been able to surpass it in magic strength until now. Is this possible? Listening to Tick's story, Lin En was a little amused. But if you think about it carefully, this seems to be quite normal. In the land of wizards, knowledge is equal to power. Whoever has the strongest magic means who has the most profound research. When it is impossible to argue who is right or wrong, magic is undoubtedly the only way to solve the problem. After all, the bigger the fist, the harder the truth. Since you think your theory is correct, why can't you create more powerful magic and fight back? It can only be said that this is a debate method with the characteristics of the land of wizards. By the way, I heard that the wizards of the prophecy school are preparing to refute your theory at the seminar. They seem to have found some mistakes. You'd better be careful at that time. Tick suddenly reminded him as if he remembered something. A person may be very knowledgeable, but that doesn't mean he is good at debate. Although it is impossible to refute the truth by sophistry, it will be very embarrassing in the debate. Are they also trying to refute with magic? Lin En paused. It shouldn't be that serious, Tick said uncertainly. Although there have been conflicts caused by disputes in previous seminars, generally speaking, they don't get to the point of fighting. What about the legendary wizards? Will they be present at this seminar? Lin En asked. I don't know about that. Tick shook his head. In fact, legendary wizards rarely participate in academic seminars, unless there are interesting or very important topics. It is usually an excellent formal wizard in the school who explains the new theory. Since it was Lin En's first time to attend the seminar, Tick explained to him various precautions in great detail. Lin En also wrote them down one by one, and then asked about the information of the legendary wizards in the parliament. However, these high-ranking speakers are very mysterious, and Tick doesn't know much information. The most discussed one is the legendary wizard of. This lord also came from the land of wizards. It is said that he started to learn magic in his 30s, but he was very talented. Even though he missed the best time to learn magic, he still stepped into the realm of legendary wizards. However, unlike other legendary wizards, Rev had very few apprentices, only a few. According to this lord, he only needed some people to help him, and he didn't have much time to teach students. Is it Rev who proposed that gravity may exist widely in any object? Lin En said in surprise. Yes, Tick nodded. After your planetary theory was released, it was also this Lord Rev who flew into the sky to confirm that the continent might be spherical. Because of the planetary gravity problem, Lin En immediately understood why this legendary wizard was so concerned about this conclusion. After all, this should also be what the other party is studying. The law of universal gravitation? Lin En pondered for a while. He had already prepared an invitation letter for the Secret Law Society. He was hesitant before whether to give it to Raphael or August. After all, the IITA school did not have a great wizard as a backer, which was a hidden danger. Now that he thought about it, the legendary wizard Rev might be a better choice. Chapter 135 The Law of Universal Gravitation. The speed of the airship was faster than expected. On the evening of the third day, a magnificent city appeared in front of Lin En. That was the wizard city, Greenreal. The city was built between the mountains. It was round in shape, like a huge gem inlaid between the mountains. A large number of high-level magic crystal cannons were set up on the towering walls. I don't know why, but they turned their muzzles towards the airship without anyone controlling them. Lin En had seen the power of this thing, and it could even severely damage the powerful Eye of Death. But he was not here to invade. He had already reported it through the alchemy array before. In addition, there were two great wizards on the airship. Lin En was not worried about them being attacked. Instead, he looked straight at the spire towering into the sky in the center of the city. It was shining with magical light under the afterglow of the setting sun, and it looked very eye-catching. Is this the Corona Tower? Lin En whispered to himself. Raphael nodded in response. Yes, this is the Corona Tower, the symbol of the wizard city. Master Raphael, can I ask why this tower is called this name? Lin En asked. After experiencing the incident at the IITA harbor, he was somewhat traumatized by seeing this tall spire. In fact, its original name should be the Eclipse Tower or the Shadowless Tower, but because these names have bad connotations, it was changed to the Corona. Raphael explained. In mid-July every year, under the sunlight at noon, the shadow of this magic tower will completely overlap with the base, forming a shadowless tower. Of course, all the buildings in Greenreal on that day were like this, but the Corona Tower was very tall and the most shocking. The calendar and time of the wizard land are also divided according to the length and angle of the shadow of the Corona Tower under the sun. It is a perfect 360 days, divided into 12 months, and each month is exactly 30 days. Good design, Lin En said with a raised eyebrow. In this way, the entire tower is a huge clock. As for the cause of the Shadowless Tower, He could guess that it was nothing more than that the tower was directly above the sun in mid-July. As the two were chatting, the airship had already passed through Greenreel and landed in the square inches front of the Magic Research Association on the east side, attracting a large group of wizards to watch. After all, everyone came here by carriage, and they were the most special. "Is this the airship? It's even bigger than what I saw in the newspaper. It's really impressive. If it's not expensive, buying an airship for travel would be a good choice." Noisy discussions continued. In view of the previous publicity of the Magic Daily, Lin En and his airship had long been known to everyone, but the pictures were naturally not as shocking as the real thing. The alchemists even discussed the design principle of this alchemical instrument. It can fly and float without wings. Could it be that it uses some kind of force field magic? As a result, as soon as Lin En and his friends got off the airship, they felt countless pairs of eyes staring at them. It was obvious that they had become the focus of the whole audience, compared to the calm Lin, Johnny and Alok, who arrived at Greenreel for the first time to attend this event, seemed a little embarrassed. Philip straightened his rope. Even when Master Helrim led the team in the past, their Ida school had few opportunities to show up like this. At this moment, a tall and burly wizard with meticulously combed hair walked out of the crowd, bowed to August and Raphael with a smile, and then turned to look at Lin and others. "Mr. Philip, Mr. Lin, welcome to Greenreel. Please follow me." Then, "Masters, we'll see you tomorrow." Lin said goodbye to August and Raphael, and then followed the tall wizard to the special lounge of the Ida school. After arranging the accommodation, Philip hurriedly pulled Lin aside. "Have you figured out how to deal with the wizards from the prophecy school tomorrow?" "Of course." Lin stretched out his voice. "No." Philip was completely confused. Seeing Lin's calmness before, he thought he had already made up his mind, but he didn't expect that he was totally unprepared. But before Philip could get anxious, Lin spoke again. "If you can help me get the detailed data of the star map of the prophecy school, then I will be completely sure." "That's easy. Wait, I'll be back soon." Philip hurried out the door. The wizards from the prophecy school published these research results in previous issues of the Magic Daily, and there are corresponding records in the library, so it shouldn't be difficult to find. Lin En took out a piece of parchment from the table and wrote down the famous Kepler's third law and the law of universal gravitation. In order to understand the laws of the orbital motion of stars, it is necessary to observe continuously for dozens or even hundreds of years. It is definitely too late for him to do it now. Fortunately, those wizards of prophecy have helped him complete the most complicated work. He only needs to verify whether the theory is correct. At night, in the wizard city of Greenreel, Lin En came to the outside of Heretics Manor alone, ready to meet this famous legendary wizard. However, when he arrived at the door, he was surprised to find that the door was already crowded with people. More than a dozen wizards were waiting anxiously in front of the door, and everyone held an envelope or manuscript in their hands. Before Lin En could ask, the door of the manor opened, and a witch about 30 years old came out. Judging from the badge on her chest, she should be a 3-ring wizard. Almost at the same time, the crowd gathered at the door immediately squeezed in. "Teresa, this is the data I spent 10 years researching. I hope it can help Speaker Harif in his research." A tall and thin wizard begged and handed over a pile of manuscripts in his hand. The other wizards were not to be outdone. They crowded forward to explain their research results in the hope of attracting Teresa's attention. When reporting, they put their manuscripts on the top. Some even attached a few magic gold coins or even a whole purse to the manuscripts. Lin En realized that he was not the only one who knew that Harif was studying gravity and was going to start from this aspect and attracted his attention. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 136 Lin, I brought 3 laws and a formula. Okay, stop arguing. Teresa looked at the messy crowd with displeasure and scolded them. Then, She collected the envelopes and manuscripts of these people with an expressionless face. As for the gold coins and money bags that several wizards quietly handed over, they were all thrown back. Then, the witch looked at Lin En, who was also holding an envelope. "Ms. Teresa, I am Lin En from the Secret Law Society. I have a very important matter and want to see Lord Harith." Lin En bowed slightly and showed enough respect. After a pause, he continued to speak. "I have made some achievements in the study of gravity, and brought 3 laws of the movement of stars and an Olympiad formula, which should be able to provide some help to Lord Harith." Lin En's words made Teresa frown. Others just asked her to submit some research results, but Lin En actually wanted to meet with the teacher directly. This was simply asking for an inch. As for the so-called 3 laws mentioned by the other party, Teresa sneered. "What is the law? It is the eternal and unchanging law of magic, and the fundamental rule of the operation of this world. Every wizard who creates the law of magic will be recorded in history, and may even become the founder of a top school or even an important doctrine." And now the other party actually said that he had researched 3 laws about the movement of stars, and wanted to provide help to the legendary wizard of. This is simply arrogant. In the past, Teresa had seen wizards who dared to say that they had important research results to deceive her into recommending them. But this was the first time that he said such an exaggerated thing. Teresa's face had already shown an extremely impatient look. She stretched out her hand to grab the letter from Lin En's hand and said very stiffly, "The teacher is studying a very important topic these days and has no time to meet with you for the time being. If your theory is really that useful, I think the teacher will consider giving you this opportunity after reading it. The planetary theory that Lord Harith verified before is my doctrine. I think he should be willing to meet me." Lin En did not give up, but explained. He was a little suspicious that the other party did not recognize his identity. Teresa saw through Lin's thoughts and sneered. "Of course I know who you are. It's Lin who said shamelessly that the magic theory of the wizard land is outdated, right? But I want to tell you that the teacher has known the law of free fall you proposed for a long time, but the relevant research results have not been published yet. The teacher went to the top of the world not just to verify whether the continent is round." At this point, Teresa was somewhat indignant. The law of free fall is a byproduct of her teacher's research on gravity. It was concluded a few years ago, but it was only prepared to be published together with the gravity theory that was about to be completed. But Lin En got ahead of him. What's more infuriating is that this wizard from the Sekis Empire also mocked and questioned the research on magic in the wizard land. This is simply an ignorant trad mocking the dragon in the sky. How can Teresa put on a good face? You just heard it. Everyone here thinks that their research can help the teacher. Then should I let others go and together? Teresa said coldly. Almost every day, someone would wait at the gate of the manor, submitting their research materials in an attempt to gain the appreciation of the legendary wizard. If I agree to it, there would be no end to it. And the so-called research of these former wizards is worthless. Most of the theories are full of errors and omissions, or they are some outdated ideas, which will only waste the teacher's precious time. After saying that, Teresa turned away with a pile of manuscripts and envelopes, and the gate of the manor was also closed. After being rejected, Lin En showed a helpless expression on his face. He thought that after the publicity of Magic Daily, he had some fame in the wizard land, and it should be no problem to meet the legendary wizard of. But now it seems that his reputation does not only bring positive effects. "Sir, do you know how long it usually takes for the legendary wizard to check these letters?" Lin En turned his head and looked at the wizard next to him and asked. "It's hard to say. Maybe a few hours, or a few days. It depends on when Harith is interested." The wizard shook his head, looking at Lin En with a look of gloating. "In the past half-month, this wizard from the Sea of Mist has been famous, but now he is still rejected like himself." Lin En shook his head. He pulled his target to the level of legendary wizards all at once. Maybe it was too fast. After all, the other party was the top figure in the wizard land, and he couldn't meet him just because he wanted to. At the same time, in the manor, Teresa carefully opened the door of the laboratory, trying not to make any sound, so as not to disturb Harith, who was thinking. In the center of the laboratory, there was a huge platform, on which several small magic groups were suspended. which were surrounding the huge magic group in the center, constantly moving in uniform circles, so as to simulate the influence of the gravity of the star on the planet. The huge starry sky was reduced to within a short distance. Teresa could not help but sigh at the greatness of the legendary wizard. At this moment, Trev was standing at the bottom of the platform, holding the data he had just calculated in his hand, and shouting with an angry look, "Impossible! It can't be like this. The orbit of the stars should be a perfect circle, and the center of the circle should be placed in the center." The more Trev thought about it, the angrier he became. In the end, he simply tore the data he had spent more than 10 hours to calculate into pieces. According to his idea, gravity is like water waves, and will present a perfect circular shape. The effect of some force field magic can verify this very well. However, the star map data produced by the prophecy school does not correspond to the perfect gravity model he established. There must be something missing, such as an interference factor that he has not noticed yet. Or is the star map data given to him by the prophecy school actually wrong? Trev was thinking hard, and Teresa squatted on the ground carefully, picked up the torn manuscripts one by one, and pieced them together. In her opinion, every study of the teacher is an in-depth exploration of the world and the laws of magic. Even the mistakes and omissions are extremely valuable. These manuscripts contain the most profound thoughts. Chapter 137. The shocked legendary wizard. Trev thought for a long time, but to no avail. Finally, he sighed, looked at Teresa, and asked, "Where is today's research material?" "Here, teacher." Teresa handed over a pile of manuscripts very respectfully. Trev picked up a piece of parchment and started reading it. Although the various assumptions proposed by these formal wizards were full of loopholes, it was precisely because they were full of wild imagination that they could sometimes bring him some inspiration. After all, this was what he lacked the most at the moment. Trev scanned the lines, then quickly threw them aside, and then picked up the next piece of parchment and started reading. After reading more than a dozen copies in a row, Trev's patience was slowly exhausted. Because the quality of the theories in this issue was so poor, many theories did not even have any facts as a basis, but were just groundless fantasies. It was simply a waste of my time. Forget it. I'd better finish reading it first, just in case I could find some inspiration. Trev shook his head, holding on to the last glimmer of hope, and picked up the very beautiful envelope left on the table. "Tell them next time to just bring the manuscript paper. There's no need to make these messy decorations," Trev said dissatisfiedly. "Yes, teacher, I will remind them." Teresa nodded quickly, and she hated the wizard named Lin from outside the wizard land more and more, because this letter was taken from him. "Huh?" Trev opened the envelope casually and was stunned, because the envelope was not filled with manuscripts of magic theory research, but an invitation letter. "Dear legendary wizard Mr. Trev, I heard that you are studying the laws of the movement of stars and are committed to deciphering the secrets of gravity, space and time. I hereby invite you to join the Secret Law Society, to explore the mysteries of the truth of the universe together." Trev frowned. He didn't know how many invitations from academic discussion organizations he had to refuse every month. Now he actually took it directly mixed in with the research materials. "I'm sorry, it's my fault, teacher. I should have reviewed it first." Teresa responded in a panic. This was her job, but because of the delay before, she took it indirectly. The Secret Law Society. Trev did not throw the letter away directly, because he seemed to have heard of this name somewhere. Who brought this letter? It was a wizard named Lin En, the wizard from the Sea of Mist who proposed the planetary theory. Teresa said indignantly. "That arrogant guy also said that he brought 3 laws and a formula that can solve the problem you encountered." "What about the law and formula?" Trev asked. "Since this wizard organization can clearly propose the planetary theory and the law of free fall, it proves that there is something to it. It doesn't hurt to take a look." Teresa choked up and stammered and couldn't speak. Fortunately, Trev quickly found the formula and written by Lin En on the back of the invitation letter. First law: the orbits of all planets around stars are ellipses, and the stars are at a certain focus of the ellipse. After Trev's eyes swept over the first line, he nodded thoughtfully. Indeed, he also discovered this phenomenon in the process of studying the movement of stars. But the question is why it is like this. According to his speculation, The gravitational field should be a perfect circle, and the star should be at the center of the circle. This is also one of the problems that has always troubled him, so he hurriedly looked down. But to his surprise, there was no explanation at all. But the second and third laws were directly proposed. Second law: for any planet, the area swept by the line connecting it with the star is proportional to the movement time, and the magnitude of the planet's surface grazing speed is constant. Third law: the ratio of the cube of the semi-major axis of all planetary orbits to the square of their revolution period is equal, and the ratio is only related to the celestial body they orbit. His expression immediately became serious, because these were two brand new laws that he had not yet found. "Quick, bring me paper and pen, I want to verify it," Riv shouted loudly. Could it be that these so-called laws are really useful to the teacher? Teresa felt a little uneasy in her heart, and she didn't understand why just 3 short sentences could make her of a legendary wizard so out of control. Although she was confused, Teresa hurriedly took the paper and pen. However, Riv, who couldn't wait any longer, used magic to write and draw in the air, and then took the data of the star maps to compare one by one. Teresa was so scared that she didn't dare to breathe, so she just waited by the side with paper and pen, and waited there for several hours, until the sky was bright. Riv stopped, looked at the star orbit data suspended in the air, and muttered to himself, "It matches. It really matches." Riv felt that he was closer to the truth than ever before, so he looked at the end of the invitation letter. There was a short formula, F equals GMM/R2. However, he couldn't understand these operation symbols at all. What does F stand for, and what is G? Riv knew nothing about these mathematical operation symbols from another world, and could only guess through the research just now. He had a hunch that what he had been pursuing was in this short formula. Where is Lin En? Where is he now? Riv suddenly remembered the person who sent the letter, and asked anxiously, "The other party must understand the meaning of this formula." "Old teacher, because it was too late yesterday, the wizard named Lin En had gone back first. As for now, he should be attending the seminar," Teresa replied hesitantly, not daring to mention that she deliberately stopped him outside the door. "I'll bring him here immediately." Teresa hurriedly planned to go out and bring Lin En back. As for the previous contradiction, she couldn't care so much. Teresa knew very well that she was just a 3-ring wizard with ordinary talent. It was because she provided some inspiration to her with an academic paper that she was appreciated and became his apprentice. If the legendary wizard knew that he had made such a big mistake, his current position would probably be lost. "No need, it's too slow, I'd better go myself," Riv thought, sorted out the messy research manuscripts in the room, gathered them in his hands, and then flew out of the wide-open window. Chapter 138 Morning Star Silver Moon Corona. "Professor Lin, where did you go last night? I wanted to discuss today's topic with you, but you didn't come back after waiting for more than an hour." In front of the hall of the magic seminar in Greener City, Philip asked with a slight complaint. "You know, he was busy all afternoon and night yesterday just to help Lin win this debate. I went to see Lord Harif to verify a theory," Lin continued. "Then what? Did you see that Lord?" Philip asked curiously. "No, I didn't. In fact, I was stopped outside the door," Lin answered calmly. "That's normal, even if it's Master Helram. If you want to meet this legendary wizard, you have to make an appointment in advance and choose a time when the other party is free." Philip laughed. Harif is a well-known research madman. It would be strange if Lin didn't get embarrassed when he came to him so rashly. Lin shrugged his shoulders and didn't care too much about the defeat. Instead, he turned to look at Johnny and the others, asking if they were ready for what they wanted. After getting a positive answer, he walked into the hall of the magic seminar with everyone else. This is a beautifully decorated auditorium with a large space inside, enough to accommodate thousands of people. Red chairs are placed in a circle, and the overall shape is a ladder. Even the wizards sitting in the back can clearly see the scene of the debate. Philip led Lin and the others to sit down at the long table belonging to the Yayata school. But unlike in the past, this time they were arranged to sit in the back. Philip knew very well that this was due to the impact of Master Helram's death. Yayata was no longer a magic school with great wizards. Just after the two sat down, today's seminar began soon. Among the people responsible for presiding over the meeting, Raphael and August were among them. The first person to come on stage was a tall wizard. After signaling to several great wizards, he looked at the wizards present and said, "Everyone, I am Athos, the shaping wizard of the Sky and Wind School. Next, I will demonstrate a new flying magic for you." As he spoke, the wizard turned around, and then took off his shirt amid the screams of the ladies, revealing his strong back muscles. Then a wave of magic spread from his body, and the muscles on his back began to deform and extend from the shoulder blades, and a pair of huge wings 3 meters long appeared in front of everyone. However, unlike birds, the wings that Athos transformed were bare and featherless, like a very thin and wide film. I transformed this kind of wings with reference to the bat wings of bats. They are very light and will not add too much burden to the body. They can become very wide and support the weight of the whole body. Athos explained a few words, then he flapped his wings vigorously, and after a few sprints, he flew directly, walked around the hall of the seminar for a few times, causing a burst of exclamations. It's a very delicate shaping magic, and the transformation is perfect, but it's too slow and too laborious to fly like this. Philip, who was in the audience, shook his head and didn't think much of this magic. Lin En also nodded. First of all, the human body is not light, and it takes a lot of physical strength to fly by flapping wings. Secondly, this magic requires a high level of plasticity. Those wizards who are truly proficient in shaping magic can consider directly transforming into a dorga or falcon when they want to fly, instead of just getting a pair of wings, just as the two thought. After Athos explained the details of the magic development, several great wizards gave low evaluations, and finally defined it as an unpopular 3-ring shaping magic. Athos walked off the stage with a sigh, and he knew that he would not be able to get the Morning Star medal this time. In the next hour, wizards from more than a dozen schools took the stage one after another to explain the new theories they discovered or the new magic they created. In the end, only one potion master, relying on a potion that can quickly replenish the physical strength of wizards, won the recognition of many great wizards and was nominated for the Morning Star medal. Taking advantage of this gap, Philip also explained to Lin the 3 major awards in the Wizarding Land. They are Morning Star, Silver Moon and Corona. The Morning Star looks for wizards who have researched and improved new magic, potions, and alchemy arrays. Several medals are issued at the annual seminar, but not all magic counts. For example, the improved magic demonstrated by Athos just now is not even eligible for nomination because of its limited scope of application. The conditions for obtaining the Silver Moon medal are even more stringent. It will only be awarded to wizards who have made outstanding contributions in a certain field of magic. Even Adela, the great wizard who founded the theory of fire elements 20 years ago, did not get a Silver Moon medal because this theory has not been truly verified. As for the Corona medal, it is the highest magic academic award in the entire Wizarding Land. Only those wizards who have established mainstream disciplines and have had a profound impact on the magic theory system of the Wizarding Land can be nominated for the Corona medal. If you can prove the planetary theory in the debate this time and correct the star map of the prophecy school, you may be able to win Silver Moon medal, Philip said with both expectation and excitement. The Silver Moon medal is an honor that only a very small number of great wizards can obtain. When Helram was alive, the Aida school could not obtain such a high honor. Lin En didn't care about the award or anything, but turned his head to look at the seat of the prophecy school not far to the right. Several male and female witches had stood up and walked to the platform. The leader was wearing a gray robe, his face was slightly thin, his eye sockets were sunken, and he seemed to have not slept for several nights, but his spirit was particularly excited. He looked at everyone and said in a high tone, "Masters, gentlemen and ladies, I am Yolan from the School of Prophecy. However, I am not here today to present new astronomical research results, but I have some questions that I hope Mr. Lin from outside the Wizard Land can answer for us." Although Yolan's words were not sharp, everyone could hear the tit-for-tat tone in his voice. All the wizards looked in the direction of Lin, with playful expressions on their faces. They all guessed that the School of Prophecy would definitely refute the planetary theory proposed by Lin in public at this seminar, but they didn't know how the other party would respond. Chapter 139. Of course I have evidence of the planet's rotation. Under the gazes of countless people in the meeting hall, Lin En stood up calmly and walked towards the podium. Professor, should he be able to withstand it? Alok whispered to himself. Those wizards of the prophecy school seemed to be numerous and powerful, and they looked like they were going to overwhelm others with their power. Philip was also a little worried. He had just wanted to go out together, but was pushed back by Lin En. When Yolan saw Lin En walking on the stage, he asked impatiently, Mr. Lin En, I have read your theory. According to your theory, all the stars, including the continent under our feet, revolve around the sun, right? To be precise, the planets in this galaxy revolve around the sun. Lin En corrected the mistakes in Yolan's words. Yolan did not pay attention to this difference, but said regretfully, but I found that you seem to have overlooked a very important issue. What issue? Lin En asked curiously. Since you mentioned in the Magic Daily that the period of this continent under our feet orbiting the sun is 360 days, which is exactly 1 year, how should the phenomenon of day and night alternation be explained? Isn't it that there is only 1 day and night in a year? Yolan questioned. According to the theory of the prophecy school, it is because the sun rotates around the continent with a period of 1 day that there are sunrises and moonsets, day and night. Lin En was speechless. He thought Yolan was going to say something very advanced, so he immediately explained with a smile. It's very simple. That's because the planet under our feet is not only rotating around the star, but also rotating on its own. This is why we see the phenomenon of day and night alternation. Lin En stretched out his hand and created 2 water balls of different sizes in the void, letting the small one rotate around the big one while rotating on its own. Each rotation represents the alternation of day and night. Rotation? Yolan was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect Lin En to come up with such an explanation, but he soon laughed. I have to say, your theory is very interesting, but if, as you said, the continent under our feet is rotating non-stop, and even moving around the sun, then why won't we be thrown out directly? Yolan raised his voice a little, and his voice kept echoing in the auditorium. The wizards present were also discussing it, and even the wizards who originally supported the planet theory began to waver under such sharp questioning. After all, Yolan's words are very easy to imagine, such as putting a grain of rice on a ball and then rotating the ball rapidly. The rice grain on it will inevitably be thrown out. What's more, the continent under their feet is so huge that once it moves, it will inevitably produce a very terrifying force. Even if they are lucky enough not to be thrown out, they should definitely be able to sense it. Philip was as anxious as an ant on a hot pot, as if the person standing on the stage who was targeted was himself. Lin En's expression remained unchanged, and he asked with a smile, You should have worked in a carriage, right, Mr. Yolan? Why are you asking this? Yolan said hesitantly. Lin En did not answer but turned to look at the wizards at the seminar. I think everyone should have noticed that when the carriage is driving, we can only feel the body swaying back and forth most clearly at the beginning and end. At other times, we feel the most the bumps caused by the carriage driving over the uneven road surface. That's because we are in the carriage during the driving process. Based on the friction, we move with the carriage. Of course, because the speed of the carriage is sometimes fast and sometimes slow, it is not intuitive enough, Lin En said, and suddenly turned to look at several great wizards. I think Master Raphael and Master August, who have ridden in the airship, should have a better understanding of this. Everyone's eyes were immediately projected to Raphael and August. After a period of contemplation, the two nodded together. Unlike the carriage, the airship is completely floating. After adding the windproof magic circle, it travels very smoothly. They can hardly feel that they are moving fast on it. This planet is the same. The previous free-fall experiment has proved that the resistance we feel is based on the elements. Under the influence of gravity, all elements and matter change their positions along with the rotation of the planet, so of course we can't feel that we are moving. If one day it suddenly stops rotating, we will probably all fly out, Lin En said jokingly. Absurdity. A red-haired witch beside Yolan shouted loudly, interrupting Lin En's words. Lord of once flew to the top of the world. If the continent under our feet is really rotating, Then Lord Herve should have flown to other places with the rotation of the continent. The influence of gravity is very large, ma'am, much larger than you think, so large that even if we rise to hundreds of thousands of meters in the sky, we can't escape its control. Lin En said lightly, then looked at everyone and said loudly, just as we cannot perceive that the planet under our feet is round, the rotation speed of the planet is very slow compared to its huge size, and we are as small as dust, just like ants building holes in the hills, but for them, this hill is the whole world. The discussion in the hall became more and more intense. Some people agreed with Lin En's theory of planetary rotation. After all, this can well explain the problem of day and night. However, more people still have deep doubts. According to Lin En, just because they rotate with the planet, they can't feel that they are also rotating. This is too outrageous, not magic at all. Where is the evidence? What evidence do you have to prove that the continent under our feet is rotating? All this is just your fantasy. Yulin sneered sharply. According to your theory, aren't we also running with this continent when we sleep at night? Then did you move by yourself when you were in the carriage? Lin En asked with a smile. Of course. Yulin paused. He wanted to say that he didn't move, but thinking about it carefully, he was indeed moving. This contradictory feeling made Yulin, who didn't know what a reference frame was, confused. In the end, he could only conclude that he didn't move, but the carriage moved him. But this conclusion undoubtedly proved Lin's theory of rotation. Yulin was entangled for a long time and didn't speak. As for the evidence of planetary rotation, of course I have it. Lin ignored Yulin, who was entangled, but looked at the seat of the IATA school and said, Johnny, Elrock, Pierce, bring up everything you prepared. P.S. 3 more chapters to ask for support. Chapter 140 Lin's Pendulum Experiment. Okay, it's finally our turn. Alok and the others who had been watching from below for a while were already excited. After getting Lin's approval, they immediately ran to the platform with a large box in their arms. Yulin approached with some uneasiness. The large box was filled with some strange things. The most conspicuous one was a large iron ball with a protruding needle embedded underneath. Masters, please allow me to use magic to make some changes here, so that the effect of the experiment can be more intuitive, Lin said. If you think this can help. Raphael nodded and agreed. Lin immediately used fossil to mud to turn the large stone bricks under his feet into fine sand. Then he asked Johnny and the others to splice the stone slabs in the box together to form a giant disc on the outside of the platform. There were precise 360 scales on the corners of the disc, and a wooden stick was placed in front of each scale. Finally, Lin En asked the wizard who had developed the magic of flying to hang the iron ball on the ceiling of the seminar hall with a steel wire rope. Because of the need to demonstrate magic, the entire magic seminar hall is not only wide, but also very high, with the ceiling 60 meters from the ground. The iron ball weighing 30 kilograms was tied to a thin steel wire rope only 10 centimeters away from the sand, and the protruding needle below had already sunk into the sand. What are you going to do? Yulin was completely confused. He couldn't understand the other party's operation at all. The other wizards on the field also had confused expressions on their faces. Do an experiment. Lin En waved his hand to let Alok and others stand aside, and then asked, Mr. Yulin, what do you think will happen if you push this iron ball hard? The iron ball will be thrown out and then swing back and forth in a straight line. Is there any need to say that? Yulin responded impatiently. I don't think so. Lin En shook his head, because you overlooked a very important factor, that is, the continent under our feet is rotating, and the generated Coriolis force will inevitably affect the swing of the iron ball. So when the pendulum swings, it will constantly deflect and rotate around the disc. Absurd. Yulin didn't believe in the so-called Coriolis force, and didn't believe that there would be such an outrageous thing as the rotation of the continent. That was a complete fallacy. Thinking of this, Yulin stared at it intently, fearing that the other party would do something tricky during the experiment. Lin En didn't even use magic, but after pulling the iron ball to the 0 scale position of the sand table, he directly let go of his hand and let the iron ball swing freely with the help of gravity. The nearly 60-meter-long steel wire rope was stretched straight because of the weight of the iron ball. Under the action of gravity, It brought a gust of wind and hit the wooden bar on the opposite side that belonged to the 180 scale. Just as Yulin said, the path of the iron ball was indeed a straight line. All the wizards in the audience focused their attention on the pendulum. Because the steel wire rope that bound the iron ball was very long, the iron ball did not swing back and forth very fast, but it was very regular, and it did not deviate as Lin En said. Yulin waited for a long time but saw no change. He immediately looked at Lin En and said mockingly, "Where is the phenomenon of the pendulum rotating around the disc that you just mentioned? Why didn't I see it? You were too anxious, and your observation was not careful enough, so you couldn't see it." Lin En sighed. Yulin was very annoyed. He was not blind. Couldn't he see whether this thing was rotating or not? At this moment, a cry of surprise suddenly came. "It's deviated. The running track is really deviated." Several great wizards stood up from their seats and stared at the sand table under the pendulum. "Where is it deviated?" Yulin also looked in the direction of everyone's gaze, and was surprised to find that the track left by the needle at the bottom of the iron ball on the sand table was not a completely straight line. There would be a slight deviation every time it went back and forth. However, this deviation was so small that it could not be seen with the naked eye. It could only be judged by the track left by the pendulum across the sand table. Dong! With a slight muffled sound, the wooden bar representing one scale was knocked down by the iron ball, and then the pendulum knocked the wooden bar representing 181 scales to the ground. Whether it was the traces left on the sand table or the knocked down wooden bars, it undoubtedly proved that the pendulum was really moving slowly, and it was not swinging around, but deviating to the left in a regular manner. The wind must have blown it. A wizard from the prophecy school shouted loudly. Yulin immediately thought of this, but before he could speak, he heard Philip on the side say mockingly, "We are indoors. Where does the wind come from?" Even if there is no strong wind, the air is still flowing, and even the slightest influence is still an influence, Yulin said with his neck stiff. In short, he never believed in the rotation of the planet, which is not magical at all. "Masters, since Mr. Yulin has doubts, please turn this area into a vacuum," Lin En suggested with a smile. This time it was August who took action. He was also very curious about such an interesting pendulum deflection phenomenon. So according to Lin En's request, he pulled out all the elements in the entire disk without affecting the pendulum as much as possible, forming a vacuum area. Yulin held his breath and stared at the disk, eager to see new changes in the trajectory of the iron ball. 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute, the pendulum still firmly deviated to the left, and even the amplitude of each deflection was exactly the same as before. Soon the wooden bars corresponding to the 2 scales and the 182 scales were also pushed to the ground. "There is no wind now," Philip said sarcastically. Yulin's face turned red and blue. He opened his mouth but could not speak. There was no magic and no wind interference. So where did the force that made the pendulum deflect come from? Could it be that the so-called Coriolis force really existed? As time passed, more and more wooden bars fell. In the hall of the discussion meeting, the wizards who were originally sitting in their seats had gathered together and surrounded the high platform, just to observe this magical experiment up close. "This is actually true. The continent under our feet is moving. It's really moving," a witch screamed loudly. "It's incredible. This is simply a miracle in the history of magic. We actually live on a planet that keeps rotating," Raphael also said with emotion. Chapter 141 Raphael, my brain is shaking. Under the gaze of thousands of eyes, the swinging iron ball slowly knocked down the wooden bar representing the 15 scales. The traces on the sand table drawn by the pendulum were like long and thin petals, revealing an extreme beauty. "This is the line representing the truth of magic." Lin En pointed at the sand table at this time, looked at Yulin, and said jokingly, "I think things are very clear, aren't they, Mr. Yulin? This is the evidence you are looking for. The rotation of the planet is not without any influence. But this kind of force must be amplified by the pendulum before it can be directly displayed in front of you and me." Yulin sat on the ground with a pale face, looking at the swinging iron ball without saying a word. A wizard from the prophecy school beside him shouted hysterically, "This is impossible! This is impossible! You must have cast a spell on the pendulum." As soon as these words came out, Several great wizards on the field frowned, looking a little unhappy. Whether there is a magic fluctuation or not, can they still not feel it? Lin En looked at the prophecy school wizards who were still unwilling to accept the facts, shook his head, and said, "The materials I used are not difficult to get, right? Anyone can perfectly replicate this experiment under the same conditions. The truth is there, and it will not be moved by anyone's will. The reason why this world has day and night is because of the rotation of the planets, and the change of the 4 seasons is related to the movement of the sun's direct point." Lin En stretched out his hand and used several water masses to simulate the orbital motion of celestial bodies. In the simplest words, he gave everyone a unique astronomy class. The wizards present were fascinated by what they heard. In the past, no theory could explain the changes of day and night, the 4 seasons, and the laws of the movement of the stars so clearly. The mysterious veil of the world was like a corner that was suddenly lifted. Although it was only the tip of the iceberg, it was enough to make people feel trembling. Until Lin En's voice fell, the hall of the seminar was still audible, and everyone was immersed in thinking about the laws of the movement of the planets. The silent silence lasted for several minutes. As more and more people woke up, thunderous applause suddenly rang out in the hall of the seminar. Some people even took off their hats and bowed to Lin. Some people shouted loudly to vent their excitement. "What a wonderful and irrefutable theory!" August also applauded, saying in an appreciative tone, "The exquisite and regular star scene displayed by Lin made Raphael's brain tremble." Countless inspirations surged in his heart. If the seminar had not ended yet, he would have been eager to go back and turn his inspiration into a sculpture. "I know you can do it, Professor Lin." Philip excitedly walked up to Lin and hugged him. He had already seen the silver moon medal waving at them. Lydia, Elrock and others looked at Lin with admiration and longing. Pierce even fantasized about when he could be like Professor Lin, expounding the magic theory he had researched under the attention of the crowd and winning the applause of the whole hall. But soon their excitement was broken, because Lin spoke up. "Lydia, Johnny, Alok, and Pierce, why don't you record the law of the pendulum's motion and the time it takes to pass each scale? You should also know the length of the wire rope and the weight and circumference of the pendulum clearly. Draw its motion curve and calculate various data. This is your homework today." Pierce, who was originally immersed in fantasy, was immediately pulled back to reality, and his face drooped. "Why is there such a thing as homework when you are already in Green Ridge? Have you written it down?" Alok hurriedly looked at the 2 witches beside him. Lydia shook her head. She was staring at the pendulum's swing trajectory, and her head was a little dizzy. "I have recorded it. The length of the wire rope is 60 meters, the weight of the pendulum is 30 kilograms, and the time it takes to deflect one scale is 5 minutes and 3 seconds. The swing period is—" Johnny broke out all the data he had recorded. Alok and others looked at Johnny and were so moved that they were about to cry. "You are our savior." Compared to Lin En, who was the focus of everyone's attention and became the absolute focus of the venue, all the wizards of the prophecy school were looking ashen. They spent more than 100 years and countless energy observing the laws of the stars to draw a perfect star map. As a result, someone told them that this star map was actually wrong, and their efforts were in vain. It was not a continent under their feet, but a sphere that was constantly rotating. Under such a huge blow, the wizards of the prophecy school were almost collapsed, and it seemed as if the whole world was about to collapse. "Cheer up, we haven't lost yet. This pendulum experiment just proves that there is a strange force affecting the movement of the iron ball." A witch from the prophecy school stood up and said firmly, "But besides the Coriolis force, what else can affect the trajectory of the pendulum?" Yoland was almost desperate. After all, such a large pendulum was just there, and Lin En did not cast any magic on it. "Have you all forgotten? Lord Herv is studying a theory of gravity, using the star data we gave. If there is any force that can affect it, I guess it must be gravity," the witch said loudly. Hearing this, Yoland and other wizards of the prophecy school were immediately inspired and immediately regained some confidence. Yes, if their research was wrong, how could the legendary wizard Lord Herv discover the secret of gravity from the data of these stars? Could it be that even the great legendary wizard could not see these mistakes? Yoland knew that Lord Herv's research had reached the most critical moment. It was a great theory that could change the magic theory of the entire wizard land. After all, this involves the mystery of space and time magic. Just as Yoland and others were thinking about it, the door of the magic seminar was suddenly opened by someone. No, it is not quite appropriate to describe it as opened. In order to ensure that the progress of the seminar is not disturbed, the door had been locked long ago, and now the doors on both sides have fallen to the ground with a loud bang. Chapter 142. It seems that you are no longer suitable to host the next seminar. The sudden and violent banging sound immediately attracted the attention of all the wizards on the scene. Raphael was even more annoyed. Who was so bold as to break into the seminar so rudely? Could it be that the wizards of the Doomsday sect were going crazy again and trying to disrupt this academic seminar? Raphael looked at the door in anger, but he saw a figure that surprised him very much. The one who broke in was a male wizard with messy hair, the legendary wizard Rolf. Raphael's anger was immediately extinguished. He couldn't control this lord. Those prophecy schools surrounded him as if they had seen a savior, and a witch shouted excitedly, "Lord Rolf!" The Lin from outside the wizard land just now actually questioned the star map data that we spent hundreds of years researching. This is even more questioning your gravity theory. However, Rolf was too lazy to listen to what they were saying. He only heard the two words Lin En shouted impatiently. "Where is he? Where is Lin En? He is on the podium now. He is the young wizard with brown hair," the witch said loudly. Rolf pulled the witch who was blocking the way aside, and the wizards who had gathered in front of the podium also hurriedly retreated. Seeing Rolf in such a hurry to find Lin En, and with a group of wizards from the prophecy school following behind him, the expressions of several great wizards on the scene were vaguely uneasy. Could this legendary wizard really be here to cause trouble? Raphael was the first to stand up, blocking Rolf with a headache, and spoke in a tactful tone. "Lord Rolf, Mr. Lin En just proposed a very important new theory related to the theoretical system of the entire wizard land. We are considering submitting a nomination for the Silver Moon Medal to the Parliament." Raphael did not directly stop him, but pointed out the Silver Moon Medal. This was a big thing that was enough to alarm the other speakers, so Rolf must be careful. Even if there are any conflicts, they can be resolved through words. Silver Moon? Rav paused. He had not listened to the previous seminar and immediately thought that Lin En was expounding on the law of universal gravitation. He looked at several great wizards and showed a little dissatisfaction on his face. The law of universal gravitation will become the foundation of all future space magic. This is definitely a bold stroke in the history of magic. In the end, there is only one Silver Moon Medal. It is not too much to give it to the Corona Medal directly. Raphael and others could not even see this. He doubted that these people were no longer suitable to host the next seminar. "You can report the nomination of the Corona Medal directly to the Parliament, in my name," Rav said without hesitation. Raphael and others almost doubted whether they had heard it wrong. The wizards of the prophecy school who had just traced a few glimmers of hope were even dumbfounded. What is going on? Didn't Lord Rav come to give their prophecy school a good name? Why did he suddenly propose to issue the Corona Medal to the other party? Is there something wrong? Even Philip found it a little unbelievable. Even if Lin En had described the picture of the movement of the stars, he wouldn't have directly awarded the highest academic award, right? Directly give him the Corona Medal? Isn't this a bit too exaggerated? You know, in the past few hundred years, only 3 people in the entire wizard land have won such an honor, and they are all legendary wizards without exception. After Rav said this casually, he looked at Lin En, the only young man with brown hair on the field, and asked anxiously, "Tell me quickly, what does the formula on the invitation letter mean? What is M, and what is G?" The moment Lin En saw Rav suddenly break in, he guessed that the other party must have read his letter, so he was not surprised by Rav's sudden question, and responded freely. The 2m in the formula refer to the mass of the two objects, G is the gravitational constant, and R refers to the distance between the two objects. To put it simply, it is the gravitational constant multiplied by the product of the mass of the two objects divided by the square of their distance. Lin En said concisely and clearly. Is it that simple? Rav muttered to himself. He had studied the gravity problem for several years and searched for a lot of data, but now he was summarized by the other party in one sentence and one formula. The complexity is its deduction process. Many truths are often simple, clear and understandable. Lin En replied casually. Well said, the truth should be simple and everyone can understand it. Rev nodded in agreement. Lord Rev, what is the formula you are talking about? Is it related to gravity? Raphael, who had been listening for a while, couldn't help but interrupt. The wizards present were also waiting for Rev's answer. They had already vaguely realized that the legendary wizard had said before that he would issue the Corona medal to Lin En. I'm afraid it's not just because the other party described the picture of the stars. Yes, I have studied the laws of star movement for more than 10 years, just to explore the mystery of gravity, but I didn't expect that someone had already given the answer first, Rev said with emotion. It was no secret in Greenreal that Rev was studying gravity. Many people were waiting for the legendary wizard to construct a spell model for force field magic. This was the most exciting and anticipated thing in recent years. Once successful, it would greatly reduce the conditions for the use of this type of magic, and perhaps even develop more powerful space magic, creating another mainstream magic discipline. But Rev was actually asking Lin En about gravity. Could it be that a three-ring wizard had a deeper understanding of gravity than the legendary wizard Rev? Everyone felt absurd. Rev didn't care about this. After pondering for a while, he asked another key question. I can understand mass and distance, but what is the gravitational constant? Unfortunately, I don't know, Lord Rev. Lin En shook his head and said bluntly, if it was data from Earth, he could say it casually. After all, there was a lot of information in the intelligent brain, but if it was this alien planet, he wouldn't be 100% sure. He could only infer that the gravitational constant should be very close to that of the Earth by weighing a 1 kilogram iron ball and calculating the data. However, without rigorous experiments, Lin En was not prepared to speak rashly. Lin En's answer was obviously beyond Rev's expectations, and also confused the wizards present. You even have the formula, and you explain it very clearly. But when asked about the data, you know nothing. Did you make it all up? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143 Lin En, my apprentice can calculate the circumference of a planet using his feet. Seeing that Lin En was speechless under Rev's questioning, he could only evade by saying that he didn't know. The wizards of the School of Prophecy, who had originally looked ashen, suddenly stood up again. Yoland asked as if he had found a breakthrough. Mr. Lin En, if I'm not mistaken, you are not a great wizard yet, and you can't use force field magic, right? Yoland's question was very fatal, and immediately made many wizards who supported Lin En discover a very serious problem. Since the other party is not a great wizard and can't even use force field magic, how did he explore this gravity formula? The universal gravitation formula is based on the 3 laws of star movement proposed by the legendary wizard Kepler, and then calculated using the Olympiad mathematics. Lin En replied calmly and repeated the 3 laws. Last night, he used this method to confirm that the law of universal gravitation is still applicable in this alien world. So he was very calm in the face of Yoland's inquiry. Calculate? How to calculate? Another witch from the School of Prophecy immediately jumped out. According to you, to calculate universal gravitation, we need to know the so-called gravitational constant, the distance between 2 stars, and their masses. A star is extremely large, tens of millions of times larger than the largest mountain in the wizard land, Kogar. The distance between them is so far that it is unimaginable. How can we measure it? Can we use a ruler to measure it, or can we take the continent under our feet and weigh it on the scale? If that is the case, what should be placed on the other side of the scale? Is it another star? The witch sneered. In the discussion hall, thousands of wizards had a heated discussion, because the picture of the movement of stars that Lin En showed them before was too perfect. Many people were willing to believe that the gravity formula proposed by Lin En was true, but no matter how hard they thought, they could not think of any way to calculate the weight and distance of these stars. Raphael looked at Lin En and sighed. He suspected that this universal gravitation formula might be a pure theory that had not been verified. Originally, this was nothing. After all, there were so many pure theories, and this one was not bad. However, it attracted the attention of Lord Hove, and he even paid attention to it to the point of issuing the Corona Medal. If this theory is finally proved to be wrong, then the praises that Lin En had received before would be even more tragic. Yoland and others breathed a sigh of relief. They had reason to believe that the so-called universal gravitation formula of the other party was simply fabricated. Lin En looked at the few people with pity, as if he was looking at a fool. Don't think this process is too difficult, ladies and gentlemen. As long as you use some basic knowledge of Olympiad mathematics, even my apprentices can calculate the mass of a star and the distance between them, Lin En said in a calm tone. But in the eyes of a group of wizards of the prophecy school, this was just bragging. If Lin En had a way to calculate it himself, they might believe it a little, but if they said that even a wizard apprentice could calculate the data of the stars, it could only be described as outrageous. Thousands of wizards immediately turned their attention to Johnny, Lydia, Alok, and Pierce. I don't have it. I can't calculate it. Alok was about to cry now. He had long discovered that Professor Lin En might have always had some unrealistic fantasies about their abilities. In fact, they are really not that awesome. Such huge stars. How heavy are they? How far are they from each other? How can I calculate it? Lin En continued to speak as if he didn't see the resentful eyes of Alok and others. If you want to measure the distance between stars, you need to find a reference in the vast universe first, and the best reference is the planet under our feet. As long as you know its data, everything will become easy. Yoland sneered. He wanted to see how the other party would calculate the various data of the continent under his feet. Lin En looked at Alok and others and suddenly asked, if I want to know the circumference of a circle, what method should I use? You can multiply the diameter by pi, Professor, Lydia shouted loudly. She still remembered it very clearly. What if we don't know the diameter? Lin asked again. Lydia's face froze immediately. Elrock and Pierce thought hard for a while, and finally Johnny pointed to the sand table on the platform and responded, a circle has 360 scales, and each scale is equal, so I can also determine its circumference by measuring the length of each scale segment. Well said, Johnny. You have always been very good at Olympiad mathematics. Lin laughed and continued. The planet under our feet happens to be a circle, so can't we calculate it by using the same method? As soon as this was said, the wizards in the hall were stunned for a moment, as if this was the case. The planet under our feet is extremely huge. How can we determine the angle and distance? Prv frowned. He had flown to an altitude of tens of thousands of meters, and with the help of magical vision, he could only see a slight arc. It was impossible to divide the scales into equal amounts like the sand table under his feet. Lin did not answer directly, but walked to the sand table and asked, I heard that in mid-July every year, under the sunlight at noon, the shadow of the Corona Tower will overlap with the tower body. Is that true? Yes. Raphael nodded. Then I believe you should not have forgotten the point of direct sunlight when I introduced the changes of the 4 seasons. The reason why the Corona Tower has no shadow is precisely because at noon in mid-July, we are at the point of direct sunlight. Let's use it as the 0 scale. Lin En walked to the sand table, took a wooden stick, and placed it at the place representing the 0 scale in the sand table, and then put down the second wooden stick a little further away. Then we just need to use magic to erect a tall pillar as far away from the Corona Tower as possible, and measure the length of the pillar and the shadow respectively. Then we can calculate the angle with the center of the earth, right? Using the tall pillar as the base point and the sun as a ruler. Genius. What a genius idea, Rf said excitedly. In this way, the pillar is like a straight line on the arc, and the shadow is the other side of the right angle. This is a simple problem of finding the vertex angle of a right triangle. Raphael and others looked at the 2 wooden roots placed on the sand table and couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. It can actually be like this. Chapter 144, Invade the Sekha's Empire and Overthrow the Church. Alok, it shouldn't be difficult for you to calculate the data of the planet under your feet now, right? Lin En looked at several wizard apprentices and asked with a smile. Alok and others nodded excitedly. and then they realized that the professor was not bragging when he said the words in the first class. Mathematical Olympiad can really calculate anything. Once you know the circumference of the planet, it is easy to calculate the radius, area and even volume. The wizards in the seminar couldn't suppress their excitement. Now there are only 10 days left until mid-July. In other words, in 10 days, the continent under their feet. No, it should be said that the whole picture of this planet will be presented to them. I really don't know how your brain grows. You can think of such a strange method, Raphael said with emotion, before Lin En arrived. Although there was no systematic mathematical Olympiad subject in the wizard land, most wizards were still clear about the calculation methods of basic geometric figures, but they never thought that they could calculate the circumference of the planet under their feet with such a simple calculation method. Perhaps this is genius. Facing the praise from the crowd, Lin En was very calm. After all, this method was not his own idea. He used the idea of Eratosthenes, the former father of geography, and made some changes based on the situation in the wizard land. In his previous life, when he was looking for historical data, Lin En was also amazed at the genius of the other party. This was simply using basic methods to solve the most complex problems. Are there any requirements for the place where this pillar is placed? Herv couldn't wait to verify this conjecture. If it weren't for the fact that there were still 10 days before mid-July, he would have wanted to take action now. The ground should be as flat as possible, at least 500 kilometers away from Green Real. For more accurate data, it is best to be more than 1,000 kilometers. Lin En said in a deep voice. After all, the continent under our feet is too large. One scale may be tens or hundreds of kilometers. It is better to be as far away as possible. The pillar should also be as high as possible so that the shadow is obvious enough. So far away. Herv's brows frowned. In this way, it may be impossible to verify it in the wizard land. There is a very suitable place. I heard that there is also a tower hundreds of meters high outside the Sea of Mist. This is a ready-made pillar, August suddenly suggested. The wizards present were a little surprised and guessed where August was talking about. Philip, who was standing aside, suddenly seemed to have thought of something and suddenly spoke in surprise. Master August, are you talking about the Sky Tower in the Holy City? Although he had never been to the Secas Empire, he had heard him and the sailors who traveled back and forth between the two places talk about some novel deeds outside the Sea of Mist, including the Sky Tower. It is rumored that it is the place where the creator of life, the Lord of the Stars, and the goddess of the moon, Ella, manifested, and it is the holy place in the minds of all believers. Philip naturally sneered at this so-called god, but he also knew the power of the church. If they went to the holy city specifically to measure the length of the shadow of the Sky Tower, it would be beyond death. I am afraid that they would not even be able to enter the gate and would be caught and burned to death. However, there are not many people as rational as Philip. Many young wizards even clamored to attack the holy city directly. In their view, the current wizard land is no longer a refuge for exiled wizards. After hundreds of years of development, they have created countless novel magics, established a wizard promotion system and a magic theory system, which is powerful beyond imagination. The starry sky scene that Lin En told them made all the wizards realize that the world is so big, but they are trapped in this small wizard land. But Herv quickly poured cold water on them. We only have 10 days. Even if we set out now, we may not be able to reach the Sky Tower at the fastest speed. And there is no need to make it so troublesome. We can directly use magic to create a floating ice island on the sea and erect an icicle on it. The calculated data is the most accurate. The side of the wizard land facing the Secas Empire is the Sea of Fog, but this does not mean that the entire island is wrapped in fog. In fact, the sea behind is passable, but this sea is too wide. Once, a great wizard wanted to see what was on the other side of the sea. As a result, he flew for a month and only found some uninhabited islands and ferocious sea beasts. He almost couldn't find the way back. Under Herv's decision, public opinion did not evolve to the point of attacking the Secas Empire and overthrowing the church. Although Herv's floating island plan was considered a cowardly approach by some wizards who were afraid of the church, they did not dare to speak out against it. The focus of the discussion soon turned to how to determine the distance between the Corona Tower and the pillar. A witch quickly proposed that they could find a very long rope, measure the length, and use it as a unit of length. Then, every time the rope passed, leave a mark on the ground as a mark, and finally just count how many marks there were. But this proposal was rejected not long after because it was too troublesome, not to mention that the terrain of the wizard's land was undulating and there would be a large error. After a heated discussion, the more convenient carriage and ship distance measurement method quickly prevailed. How about using an airship? Lydia raised her hand high and suggested. Raphael and the others suddenly felt their eyes light up. He just wanted to say this, but Lydia brought it up first. Compared with the alchemy ship that would be disturbed by wind and waves, the airship suspended in the air is undoubtedly a better choice. Not only can it overcome all obstacles and achieve true straight-line forward movement, but after adding wind-proof magic, the speed of navigation is also very stable and not easy to fluctuate. If it sails at full speed, the airship can sail 15 kilometers per hour. So full-speed sailing a day is 360 kilometers. It is still very accurate to judge the distance based on this benchmark. Lin En did not participate in the discussion of the crowd. He turned his head and looked at the wizards of the prophecy school, and asked with a smile, "Mr. Yuland, do you have any questions now?" Yuland was stunned and did not reply. His mind was full of the method proposed by Lin En to divide the circumference equally to measure the circumference. Although the accurate result has not been obtained yet, he understands that the prophecy school has lost this time, and lost thoroughly. Chapter 145 Reference Objects and Pi. Mr. Lin, you won. It seems that our efforts over the years have been in vain. Yuland reacted after a long time and said in a lost state. This sentence seemed to drain the little strength left in Yuland, and the whole person seemed to have aged several years in an instant. The other wizards of the prophecy school also looked absent-minded. Their star map was wrong, and the hundreds of years of efforts of the entire prophecy school had become a complete joke. There is no need to be so self-deprecating, Mr. Yuland. In a sense, your star map is still very accurate. Lin En shook his head and said comfortingly. He was able to confirm that the law of universal gravitation was still applicable in the other world, and it was the law of star movement that the prophecy school had observed for hundreds of years. Lin En was embarrassed to hit these wizards who yearned for the starry sky too hard. "So you finally admit that all this is fabricated?" a witch from the prophecy school said excitedly. Lin En glanced at her and was speechless. When did he say this? But before he could speak, Yuland stopped several colleagues who were still trying to continue arguing, and waited for Lin En's answer with a confused look on his face. Lin En ignored the wizards of the prophecy school who had been hit hard and were already somewhat unconscious. He looked at Yuland and continued to speak. "Remember the carriage problem I told you about? If the carriage is used as a reference, the person inside is stationary. But if the starting point is used as a basis, then he is indeed moving. In my opinion, both statements are correct. The geocentric theory and the heliocentric theory, to put it bluntly, are different references. Of course, the heliocentric theory is more suitable for solving some practical problems. After all, the essence of the formation of a galaxy orbit is the gravity of the stars, so the proposal of the heliocentric theory is indeed a huge progress. As for whether these people can understand it, it is none of his business." Amid the discussion of the crowd, the magic seminar that lasted for a whole morning soon ended, but the topic of planets, star orbits, and airship ranging was still hot. Some wizards from the top schools did not suddenly remember until they walked out of the seminar that they participated in this seminar to show the new magic and new theories they had researched. As a result, they did not say a word, and the entire seminar became a one-man show for Lin En. However, under such circumstances, I am afraid that not many people would care about what new magic they had researched. Everyone was guessing how long and how big the planet under their feet was. Philip was even more excited and could not restrain himself. Before attending the seminar, he was a little worried that Lin En would not be able to deal with the difficulties of those wizards from the prophecy school. Unexpectedly, Lin En refuted these people completely in a few words, proved the problem of the rotation of the planet with an ingenious experiment, and even got nominated for the Corona Medal. This is the highest award in magic academics. He never thought that the Yayata school would one day receive a glorious Corona Medal. In the past, It was the patent of legendary wizards. Philip considered using magic to call Kevin, Orlando and others to participate in the awarding ceremony. After a while, that would definitely be the most glorious day for the Yaiata school. Compared to Philip, who was still immersed in joy, Lin En was surrounded by a group of wizards with a burst of curiosity. After getting the method to measure the circumference of the planet, everyone was very curious about how to calculate the mass of a huge star. Lin En, who was tired of being asked, had to evade and said that he needed to wait until the radius and gravitational constant of the planet were calculated before further calculations could be made. After finally sending these curious babies away, Lin En turned his head and looked at the legendary wizard Ralph, who had not left yet, and asked, "Master Ralph, do you have anything else to do? I still have a few doubts. I hope you can give me some advice." Ralph's attitude was very humble, and he did not put on a high-handed look just because Lin En was only a 3-ring wizard. In fact, this question has troubled him for a whole year. "Please tell me, as long as it is a question I can answer." Lin En nodded. "I have read the 3 laws of stars you wrote, but why are you so sure that the orbit of this star must be an ellipse?" Ralph asked, very puzzled. "According to my research on gravity, it is like a water wave, which takes itself as the base point and spreads out to the surroundings to form a track. It should also be a perfect circle. I have discussed this with some scholars in the Secret Law Society and put forward many conjectures, but it can be summarized into 2 points. Lin En replied. "Which 2 points?" Rav hurriedly asked. "First, there is no perfect circle," Lin En said freely. "After precise calculations of Olympiad mathematics, pi is an irrational number, so the perfect circle in imagination may not exist in reality." "That may not be the case." Rav frowned. The wizards of the Alchemy Society were also studying the curvature of the circle. Although they came to similar conclusions, in his opinion, everything in the world must be regular, but they have not found this law yet. Unfortunately, this is the truth. I heard that an adult from the Secret Society spent decades calculating pi to 200 trillion decimal places, but the numbers he got still had no order and could be deduced infinitely. Lin En shrugged and said directly, 200 trillion? Rav was a little confused by this terrifying number. He suspected that what Lin En said to him was not the same thing at all, or that he had heard it wrong. He remembered that the Alchemy Association had deduced pi to which number, which should be the 9th. "I don't remember much, probably only the first 200. Lin En raised his hand and used magic to manifest these numbers. 3.14159265358979932. Looking at the series of complex and chaotic numbers in front of him, Rav's face twitched. The first 9 digits were exactly the same as the values deduced by the Alchemy Association. He had to admit that what Lin En said was probably true. But how much free time does the other party have to be able to deduce the value to 200 trillion digits? At the same time, Rav also admired the other party for working hard on the unsolvable pi for decades, just to get a final answer. Rav was also more and more interested in the Mystic Society mentioned in the invitation letter. It must be a gathering place for top academic researchers. Chapter 146, The All-Seeing Eye and the Invitation of the Secret Society. Rav thought for a long time before he reluctantly accepted the fact that a perfect circle does not exist, and then continued to ask, "I understand the first point you said, but what is the second point?" The second point is the interference of the gravity of other planets. Even if the orbit of the planet under our feet is close to a perfect circle at the beginning, it will inevitably deviate after tens of millions of years of evolution under the interference of the gravity of other stars. Lin En explained. "I see." Rav suddenly realized that gravity exists between all things and will inevitably interfere with each other. Even if the amplitude of this interference is very small, it will be magnified to the point of affecting the orbit of the star under the action of tens of millions of years. There is also a third point of influence, which Lin En did not say, that is, the star itself is not stationary. It also moves around the center of the galaxy, so interference is inevitable. However, this point is probably beyond the understanding of these wizards. They have not even figured out the rotation of the planet, and they know nothing about the grander picture of the universe. I have another question. The first law says that the star is at a certain focus of the ellipse. What is this focus? Purv continued to ask. It may not be convenient to explain directly. Why don't you just draw an ellipse and you will know? Lin En said with a smile. Purv stretched out his hand without hesitation, using his right index finger as a pen and magic as ink to draw an ellipse in the void, and then looked at Lin En, waiting for his answer. Damn, drawing an ellipse with bare hands, and it's so standard. Lin En's mouth twitched. He finally understood why the technology tree in the wizard land was so messed up, because many instruments wizards don't use at all. When encountering problems, they probably only consider which kind of magic is more convenient to solve. Seeing this, Lin En, who didn't know whether to laugh or cry, had to turn his head to look at the apprentices. Alok, you should draw it. Alok nodded excitedly. He knew how to draw an ellipse, and this was a chance to show off in front of the legendary wizard. Alok quickly found 2 small wooden sticks and a thin rope while jogging. Then he put the thin rope on the 2 wooden sticks inserted into the ground, used them as a fulcrum, and used a feather pen to hold the thin rope and draw a circle around the 2 small wooden sticks. An ellipse immediately appeared in front of. The positions of these 2 wooden sticks are the foci of this ellipse. Their special feature is that the sum of the distances from any point drawn on the arc to the 2 foci is the same. Some scholars in the secret society even believe that a perfect circle is actually an ellipse with 2 foci at the same position. With the help of the process of drawing a circle, Lin En explained to her the meaning of an ellipse and the derivation process of Kepler's 3 laws. Purv was fascinated by what he heard, and in the end he couldn't stop clapping his hands in admiration. Wonderful, really wonderful. I didn't expect that through mathematical Olympiad, the picture of the movement of stars could be reproduced so intuitively and clearly. If you had stayed a little longer last night, I wouldn't have to spend most of the day using the most primitive method to verify these 3 laws, Purv said with emotion. The conclusion he had drawn after a night of hard work was now perfectly summarized by Lin En in a few short sentences and a few mathematical Olympiad formulas. Sir, Professor Lin En wanted to visit you in person last night, but unfortunately he was stopped outside the door. Philip on the side hurriedly said, "Is there such a thing?" Purv was stunned for a moment, and turned to look at Lin En. "Ms. Teresa believes that your research has reached a critical point, but I'm afraid you can't squeeze out the free time for this meeting." Lin En shook his head and said, "I told her that these laws and formulas should be helpful for your research, but this lady seems to have some small prejudices against me." Purv's face immediately turned ugly. This was not how Teresa explained it to him in the manner before. After pointing out the other party's problem, Lin En did not continue to accuse Teresa of offense. A witch who could not see the situation clearly was not worth his deliberate remarks. 1 or 2 words were enough. Before coming to the wizard's land, an adult from the Secret Law Society entrusted me to hand this ring to a very wise and learned man to discuss the mysteries of the universe, time and space. The next meeting should be around 12 o'clock tonight, Lin En said as he took out a beautifully designed ring. It was the faceless ring that he had recast, but compared to before, the appearance of the ring had changed a lot. The most obvious thing was that the blooming thorn flower on the ring's surface had become a very strange geometric pattern. The outer ring is a round clock, and the inner ring is a pyramid-like pattern. In the center of the pyramid is a striking eye made of geometric patterns. That is the eye of well-knowing. Although he and the apprentice Teresa had a bad quarrel in front of the manor, Purv was able to put aside his pride and ask all kinds of questions to this 3-ring wizard. After considering it, Lin En handed over the only signal transmitter he had made. Purv solemnly reached out to take it, and after carefully checking the alchemical patterns on the ring, he quickly determined that the function of this thing was to project one's own magic power to a certain place. This method is not very novel, but Purv is still very concerned about the first contact with the secret society. In his opinion, Lin En is like a representative sent by the secret society to contact the land of wizards, and this meeting should be a formal contact between the top leaders of both sides to discuss cooperation or exchange some more profound magic issues. After getting the ring, Purv did not stay for long and left quickly. He had to go back and think about what knowledge could be used as a bargaining chip. After Purv left, Lin En asked in his mind. 071. Are you sure that the magic field is safe enough? There is no possibility that it will be taken away by others, right? Lin En did not forget that this thing was taken from Helram. Normally, he was not worried. After all, the computing power of the intelligent brain was very strong, but facing a legendary wizard, he was not so sure. The original form of magic transmission and reception was too simple, and it has now been replaced by quantum encryption. Theoretically, there is no possibility of being cracked. Lin En nodded with relief. Chapter 147. Is the corona metal important to me? Do you really think that the continent under our feet is a planet that is still rotating? That's incredible. Didn't Lord Lin just prove it with an experiment? The pendulum that does not need external force but is constantly deflecting is the best evidence. Foolish. The pendulum has been swinging back and forth in a straight line, which means that it is not the pendulum that is rotating, but the continent under our feet. Teresa, who rushed to the seminar venue, missed the end of the seminar perfectly and could only see the wizards walking out of the venue in an orderly manner. Everyone's face was full of excitement, and they kept discussing Lin's pendulum experiment. On the way here, Teresa had heard Lin's name no less than 30 times, which made her feel a little uneasy. Cass, where is Mr. Huff? Teresa stopped a familiar wizard and asked anxiously. Lord Huff just left with Lord Lin. Cass responded. Teresa's face changed immediately. She realized that she was still late, and hurriedly asked what happened at the seminar. It's such a pity that you didn't come to today's seminar. You didn't see that Lord Lin En refuted the entire school of prophecy wizards by himself. Cass was so excited that he told all the interesting things that happened at the seminar, and didn't notice that Teresa's face was getting uglier and uglier. You mean, the teacher is going to give that Lin En the corona medal? Teresa couldn't believe her ears. She felt a strong sense of jealousy in her heart. That was the highest award in the magic academic world. How could a three-ring wizard get such a high achievement? Yes, Lord Lin En's research on stars and gravity is probably ahead of everyone else. I don't know which adult's disciple in the Secret Law Society has such a high level of attainment in the theoretical research of magic academics, Cass said with emotion. Although the other party was only a former wizard, he was more knowledgeable than many great wizards. Teresa's head was buzzing. She originally thought that Lin En's research could only provide some help to the teacher's theoretical doctrines. But in Cass's description, it was not the case. It seemed that the other party had sorted out the theory of gravity one step ahead, and it was very complete. Even the teacher had to ask the other party about the problem of star gravity. But how is this possible? This is a topic that the teacher has spent several years researching and has not been able to figure out the final answer to the stars and the universe. After bidding farewell to Cass, Teresa returned to the manor in a daze. Riv had also returned a long time ago. At this moment, he was thinking about what opening remarks to make at the evening assembly so as not to lose the momentum of the wizard land. Teacher, Teresa shouted in a low voice, racking her brains to think about how to keep her current position. Riv came back to his senses, looked at Teresa, and said indifferently, from now on, you don't have to call me that anymore, Teresa. Just because of the other party's arrogance and prejudice, he almost missed the opportunity to perfect the theory of gravity. You must know that there are more than one legendary wizard in the parliament. Lin En can't find another person to explain the three laws of star orbits and the formula of universal gravitation. Even if these theories will be published in the end, I am afraid that they will have nothing to do with me. I will probably be laughed at by my colleagues. More importantly, the opportunity to communicate and discuss magic with the legendary wizards of the Secret Law Society will be left to others. Teacher, please, give me another chance. Teresa knelt down on the spot in panic, crying and complaining. It was that Lin En who took the honor that should belong to you. The law of free fall should have been studied by you first. Corona medal. Yes, and corona medal. You have been studying the theory of gravity for many years and will be able to publish these results soon. As a result, Lin En suddenly appeared again. Teresa became more and more excited as she spoke. In addition to making excuses for her behavior of making things difficult for Lin En, she also had some sincerity. Last night, She really felt that the other party wanted to join the research of gravity theory with one or two novel ideas and share this honor. "Do you think the Corona medal is important to me?" Rev shook his head. Teresa was stunned, tears still on her face, not quite understanding what Herolf meant. "That is indeed the highest honor in the wizarding land, but the fundamental purpose of the Parliament to establish these awards is to encourage wizards to explore new fields, make their researched magic theories public, and promote academic exchanges in the entire wizarding world," Herolf said indifferently. "I think you probably forgot one thing, Teresa. For wizards, the so-called glory, money, and status are just derivatives of power, but only knowledge is the source of power. Suppressing academic opinions that are not beneficial to oneself in order to gain glory is completely missing the point." At this point, Herolf couldn't help but sigh, because this kind of thing is not uncommon in the wizarding land. "Do you know why I was willing to accept you a year ago?" Herolf suddenly asked. Teresa hesitated for a long time before speaking. "It's because of an academic paper, discussing the similarities and differences between magnetism and gravity." Herolf repeated the title of the paper in full, and then shook his head and continued. "I have to say that the article is very well described. You have made many innovative assumptions based on the information in the magic library without being able to use force field magic, so I am willing to give you a chance. As my disciple, you can easily seek help from those great wizards and call on sufficient resources to verify these theories. But what about now? A whole year has passed. How much research have you completed?" Rev questioned. Teresa's face was full of shame, and she stammered and couldn't speak. "As a result, you wasted all your time and energy on attending banquets and listening to flattery." Rev's words were very harsh. He threw down a piece of parchment and said resolutely, "You are no longer suitable to be my disciple. I will transfer Coral to take over your job." Teresa sat on the ground with her body limp. She knew that from today on, all the glory and status would be far away from her. Once those wizards who flattered and fawned on her before knew this news, I am afraid they would return several times the humiliation. Teresa turned her eyes to the parchment with empty eyes. What Herolf left behind was the magic paper that she submitted a year ago and won his appreciation, but the difference was that there were many more annotations on it. Now it has become the only thing she can take away. Chapter 148. And Herolf watched Teresa leave in despair, and shook his head. He had good intentions in recruiting her as an apprentice, but he didn't expect that it would only arouse Teresa's vanity. Herolf only hoped that she would regain her original intention after losing all her current glory, otherwise another good seedling of academic talent would fall. "Come out, Aurora. Your polarized magic can't fool me." Herolf suddenly turned his head and looked at someone not far away, frowning and speaking. After the voice fell, a figure appeared out of thin air on the empty ground. It was a witch who looked about 26 or 27 years old, wearing a bright red dress and a pointed hat. Her long and curled eyelashes trembled slightly. After being discovered by Herolf, she didn't seem flustered, and a charming smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. "I'm curious, what went wrong this time?" The witch named Aurora casually pulled out a chair and sat down, tapping her cheek with her index finger, asking in confusion. "You can guess it yourself," Herolf said unhappily. Breaking into his house without permission was fine, but what made him feel even more unbearable was that the other party was obviously older than him, but he liked to pretend to be young, which was simply numbing. But Herolf didn't care too much about this little thing, and asked directly, "You should have been at the seminar this morning." "Yes. Massive stars rely on gravity to attract small mass planets to form a complete star orbit. I have to say that this theory is very interesting," Aurora said playfully, leaning back on the chair, crossing her legs. "I'm surprised that since you were at the scene, you can't help but come out to refute this argument." Herolf asked quite unexpectedly. Aurora was the founder of the entire prophecy school, and the star map circulated in the wizard land was also created by her. According to the little wizard, the two star maps are just different reference objects. The prophecy school studies its own destiny trajectory, not the birth and death of stars. Of course, it must be based on its own observed position, so there is nothing wrong with my prophecy theory. Aurora's face showed a sly smile. Herolf curled his lips. He had also heard of the other party's star divination theory. The prophecy school believed that the ending of everything was already predetermined from the moment it started, and the revelation of fate could be found from the movement of the stars. Rev naturally sneered at this statement. He never believed in the so-called destiny and prophecy. Compared with the huge stars and the vast universe, wizards are as small as dust and are not worth mentioning at all. Why should the movement of stars be linked to the fate of wizards? This is simply absurd. Have you received any new revelations in all these days? Rev asked with a sneer. The main star has disappeared, and the brown star is hanging high in the sky. This is a sign of chaos and disaster, but it may also indicate a new hope. Aurora's face straightened and she said after a pause, "We may need to pay attention to those wizards of the Doomsday sect in the near future." "Are you talking about those idiots who have burned their brains by studying elements and believe that the world is heading towards Doomsday?" Rev said disdainfully. Just like this so-called prophecy, he didn't think that those crazy wizards could cause much trouble. "Tell me the truth. What do you want to do by following me all the way here?" Rev asked impatiently. "Of course, I came here for the only ring that can communicate with the top leaders of the secret society." Aurora was also very interested in this wizard organization. "Didn't you hear before? The secret society is looking for a wise and learned person to discuss the mysteries of the truth of the universe. He gave me this ring, which is undoubtedly the most suitable choice," Rev said complacently. "I will consider relaying this to other speakers and let them listen to your speech," Aurora said playfully. Rev's face twitched. Rev was very dissatisfied with Aurora's insistence on staying here, but as a legendary wizard, he did not have the ability to send her away. He simply turned a blind eye and put on the ring with the all-seeing eye in front of Aurora. Calculating the time, it should be about the same. Rev glanced at the magic clock, and when it was exactly 12 o'clock, he input magic power to activate the ring. With a burst of inexplicable light, Rev immediately felt that his perspective was divided, and there was an extremely vast dark space in front of him. No, Rev soon realized that this was not just darkness. There were countless bright stars in the endless void, and the strongest light came from under his feet. Rev looked down, and then his pupils suddenly dilated, because an unimaginably large star was rushing towards him. No matter how rich Rev's knowledge was, he was still shocked and speechless at this moment. What a vast existence it was! At this moment, he was like an ant looking up at a giant peak. Any magic he mastered seemed insignificant under such a huge size. An indescribable fear and powerlessness rose from inside to outside. After becoming a legendary wizard, Rev had not experienced this feeling for a long time. Fortunately, before the star really got close, it changed direction and passed directly in front of him. The huge body covered everything in sight. Rev was even more shocked and broke into a cold sweat, but soon noticed that the star was moving in orbit. It was a real picture of stars. Several huge planets of different colors were orbiting a giant reddish-brown fireball, rotating continuously like many stars surrounding the moon. Unlike the planetary orbits he simulated with the magic group in the manor, they were three-dimensional and dynamic, but the process seemed to be accelerated hundreds of times, so that he could directly see the scene of the planets constantly circulating along an invisible orbit. Is this rotation and revolution? Rev immediately remembered the two concepts mentioned by Lin En at the seminar, but it was the first time he saw it so directly. The most eye-catching thing was undoubtedly the star in the center of the gravitational orbit. It was dazzling and brilliant. Even if it was far away, you could clearly feel the majestic heat emitted by the star. It looked like an extremely huge fireball, the light of hope in the dark void. Rev looked at it intoxicatedly. In the study of stars, what fascinated him most was the sun. There should be nothing in the void, but where did its energy come from, and why could it transmit light for a long time? Chapter 149. Chapter 148. What I want to talk about is the Big Bang. Just as Rev was immersed in the greatness of the star, something strange happened. The huge red star seemed to be getting bigger and brighter. The orbit of the planet seemed to be affected as well. A strong sense of crisis instantly filled Rev's mind, but the whole process was too fast. Before he could react, the huge star suddenly collapsed inward rapidly after expanding to its limit. The next moment, endless light sprinkled across the entire universe, and the star, which was heading for its end, burst into its last rays of light. It was the scene of a supernova explosion. The planets originally orbiting in the star were instantly torn to pieces, The strong electromagnetic radiation lit up the entire dark galaxy. Infinite matter continued to gush out from the inside of the star, forming an incomparably gorgeous picture. Purv was unable to recover from such a shocking scene for a long time, and muttered to himself, "What is this? This is a star heading for extinction." An old and deep voice rang out in the universe that had regained its calm. Purv turned his head and found that besides himself, there were 4 other figures in this space. The one who was speaking had a very strange hairstyle, with a head full of white hair scattered and messy, like the disordered universe and starry sky, and a terrifying pressure was emanating from his body. It was a terrifying feeling like facing a star directly. It seemed that there was endless energy in the other party's body, which was constantly spreading to the outside world. The person who spoke at this moment was naturally Lin En, but at this moment he did not appear here in his original appearance, but temporarily borrowed the external image of Albert Einstein. The scene of the supernova explosion before was naturally a show of force that he specially prepared, just to establish the high-end image of the secret law society. Lin En glanced at Purv, who looked a little dazed, and thought to himself, would this stimulation be a little bit too much? Star destruction? Purv could not imagine that such a huge and majestic star would also die one day. Nothing is surprising. Such scenes happen all the time in the universe. What you see is just a projection of a supernova explosion, Lin En said again. Projection. Purv chewed every word Lin En said carefully, looked around cautiously, and asked, "What is this place?" "A small universe of magical mimicry," Lin En explained, and then said again, "Welcome to the outside of time and space." Outside of time and space. Purv repeated it again. Does it mean independent of time and space? Purv barely suppressed the shock in his heart. He did not forget that he came here on behalf of the entire wizard land. Purv was secretly annoyed by his previous inappropriate performance, and immediately reminded himself silently in his heart that no matter what situation he encountered, he must stay calm. With the light brought by this supernova explosion, let's start today's agenda. Under the control of the intelligent brain, another person spoke a little stiffly. Purv's expression became very strange. How could such a terrifying star explosion scene be described by these people as a simple matter of turning on a magic lamp because the place was too dark? However, Purv quickly adjusted his mood and thought about the next possible topic, which was the so-called gravitational constant, or the discussion about space and time magic, and how he should deal with it. However, Lin's next sentence was beyond his expectations again. "I think the entire universe was born from a Big Bang," Lin said in a solemn tone. Purv was stunned for a moment. The universe exploded. He even wondered if he had heard it wrong. Could this thing explode? But before Purv could come to his senses, Lin continued to speak. "The beginning of the universe may be a tiny point with extremely high temperature and density. I call it a singularity. Then, at some unknown moment, it suddenly began to expand rapidly. At this moment, all forces were unified, but as the universe expanded and the temperature further decreased, gravity was separated and existed independently." Purv was confused by the Big Bang theory explained by Lin En. He didn't understand any of the words about quantum vacuum, inflation period, particle period, and material period. For a moment, he even doubted whether the other party was telling an absurd story about the universe, but after listening for a while, Purv soon discovered that the other party's narrative structure was very rigorous and did not seem to be imagined. He didn't understand many of the nouns at all, but he could also perceive that there was some kind of magical mystery contained in them. Purv thought that it was already a great thing for him to study the laws of celestial bodies with his tiny body, but he didn't expect that the legendary wizards of the secret law society were actually exploring the origin of the universe. "What is your basis? Is it the redshift phenomenon of galaxies?" White Dove, who appeared here in the image of Marie Curie, asked weakly according to someone's instructions, although she didn't know what the redshift of galaxies was. Lin En glared at White Dove, telling her to speak louder, not so nervous, and answer freely. "This is indeed one of the evidences." Then the intelligent brain controlled the other two people, and a few words that had been said long ago were slightly stiff. Then the 4 figures present looked in the direction of Purv together, as if they were waiting for the other party to put forward some valuable opinions. Lin En was very curious about how the legendary wizard would view the Big Bang theory of the universe. This theory was still very popular in the previous life, but it was not necessarily the case in this different world. After all, the Big Bang theory did not take into account the factor of magic power, and there must be imperfections, but it was still okay to put forward as a magic theory. Purve appeared very calm, as if he was lost in thought, but secretly he was sweating because he didn't understand what the other party was saying. But this was a gathering of legendary wizards, and everyone was actively discussing the truth of the universe. He couldn't just say that he didn't understand or didn't know, right? Purve suddenly opened his eyes, looked at Aurora beside him, and pulled the sleeve of the lazy witch, asking anxiously, "Aurora, tell me, what does galaxy redshift mean?" At this moment, he was extremely fortunate that Aurora, who was also keen on studying stars, was by his side, and there was someone he could discuss it with. Chapter 150 of No Time to Explain. Tell me what galaxy redshift is. What happened? Aurora had noticed Herolf's abnormality. Ever since he put on the ring, Herolf's face had been startled. She almost thought that he had been attacked at the soul level. No time to explain. Tell me first, what is galactic redshift? Herolf spoke very quickly, with an anxious look on his face. Those people were still waiting. Aurora shook her head. Sorry, I have never heard of this term. Then what is the clue? This is probably a strange astronomical phenomenon, Herolf asked again. It's not possible that the two legendary wizards with extremely high attainments in astronomy can't even answer this, right? Aurora hesitated and said uncertainly, when I used magic to observe the light of distant stars, I accidentally found that their relative positions seemed to be changing. Perhaps the so-called galactic redshift refers to this. Herolf was also a little unsure, but now there was obviously no time to hesitate. He could only try his best. Purve gritted his teeth and quickly immersed his consciousness in the magic field. Under the gaze of the four figures, he seemed to be steady but actually panicked. In fact, I have also noticed this. The distant galaxies seem to be gradually moving away from us under the influence of some force. In short, the Big Bang theory does have its rationality. Purve tried his best to weigh his words, and at the same time paid attention to the reactions of the four legendary wizards. Seeing that they did not jump out to refute, he finally let go of his heart. Fortunately, he finally fooled it. Yes, I think the phenomenon of galaxy redshift is likely to be evidence of the continuous expansion of the universe. As long as the rate of expansion is calculated and then inferred, the age of the universe can be roughly calculated. In addition, microwave radiation can also be used as the basis for the existence of this theory. Lin En explained incessantly. Purve suddenly realized that since space is constantly expanding, as long as the rate of expansion is known, the beginning of the universe can be naturally deduced. Purve, who had just witnessed a supernova explosion, soon glimpsed a little mystery of the theory of cosmic expansion through analogy. The star suddenly exploded after collapsing hundreds of times, spewing out the matter inside at an unimaginable speed. Perhaps the so-called gravitational singularity is also the same. After figuring this out, Purve was very excited and tried very hard to absorb this theory that might be related to the ultimate mystery of the universe. Even if he didn't understand the part, he forced himself to remember it and prepared to think about it carefully in the future. Just when he thought that this theory was impeccable and he had glimpsed the truth of the universe, the other three people in the magic field refuted this argument. If all matter was born from the Big Bang, even time and space appeared because of it, then where did the singularity of the explosion come from? And why can so much matter and energy be derived? These questions are extremely terrifying and chilling. Purve can't imagine what a world without time and space would be like. It completely exceeds the acceptance capacity of his brain. The rigorous attitude of the top leaders of the secret society towards magic theory, as well as their terrifying knowledge reserves, made Purve ashamed. For a moment, Purve even felt as if he had returned to the days when he had just learned magic. Everything was new and unknown to him, but he had to maintain his style as a legendary wizard. This awkward feeling made Purve feel very uncomfortable. His original plan to discuss the gravity formula with the top leaders of the secret society had to be put aside, because only by keeping quiet could he avoid exposing his true level. However, since the magic field is a place for academic discussion, naturally everyone has to say something. After the other wizards finished talking about the other two possibilities of the origin of the universe, the dimensional theory and the steady-state theory, it was finally Herv's turn. Under the gaze of 4 pairs of eyes, Herv only felt a heavy pressure coming continuously. Well, I have similar views on the origin of the universe as Mr. Albert, so I won't elaborate too much here. I'd better talk about the influence of magic structure on space. Herv changed the topic very stiffly and talked about the field he was good at, so as not to be corrected and killed on the spot. Even so, he was still a little worried that the theories he talked about might be too low level. However, Herv soon found that even the most knowledgeable legendary wizard named Albert Einstein was listening to his words seriously. Could it be that these wizards of the secret society have not yet studied the best magic structure for performing space magic? No, it is impossible. Herv quickly rejected this conjecture. From this small universe of magic embodiment and those theories that explore the origin of the universe, it can be seen that the legendary wizards of the secret society may have studied gravity and space far beyond his expectations. Perhaps the other party already knew these theories, but because he had just arrived and it was his first time to attend such a high-end academic gathering, he didn't want to refute his face. Just like the academic seminars held every year in the land of wizards, even if the magic theories explained by the former wizards on stage are shallow, they will listen carefully to each other's narration and point out the mistakes. The academic atmosphere of the secret law society will only be superior to that of the land of wizards. Herv sighed secretly, and recounted his research results over the years as concisely as possible, and then looked at the legendary wizards who were thinking, waiting for them to put forward some reference opinions. At this moment, Lin En was a little confused. If it was pure scientific theoretical knowledge, he and Herv would talk for 3 days and 3 nights without any problem, but if it was related to magic, he didn't dare to speak casually, so as not to make mistakes and be caught on the spot, destroying the image he had painstakingly created. Before, Lin En thought that Herv would definitely ask questions about the gravitational constant, and even thought about how to fool him, but unexpectedly, the voice changed and he actually talked directly about the influence of magic structure on the casting of space magic, which was undoubtedly his blind spot in knowledge. The white dove on the side shrank its neck when it saw Herv's gaze sweeping over it, not even daring to breathe. Fortunately, at this moment, the light produced by the supernova explosion was rapidly disappearing under the hundreds of times of time acceleration, and everything within the visible range was swallowed up by endless darkness again. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.